editor-in-chief of the Daily, a Saudi English-speaking newspaper, editor-in-chief of the Global Arabic Encyclopedia of 30 volumes, member of the Advisory Committee in the Ministry of Culture, chair of the Riyadh Library Club, member of the board of UNESCO International Fund for the Promotion of Culture. And over the years, he lectured in several countries abroad, including the USA, the UK, France, Sweden, Poland, Japan, in addition to most Arab countries. And he won several prizes, including Sultan Qaboos of Oman Prize. He wrote 19 books in Arabic, and he just mentioned for us المكون اليهودي في الحضارة الغربية, which is the Jewish component in Western civilization, الاختلاف الثقافي وثقافة الاختلاف, cultural difference and the culture of difference, لغة الشعر, لغات الشعر, languages of poetry, which won the Ministry of Culture Book Prize for the same year, هموم العقل, anxieties of the mind, مواجهات السلطة, which is power confrontations, and this is sold, by the way, here in Kuwait. So we see that most of his interest is the position of the intellectual in the Arab region. His publications in English are about 20 papers, and he has a recently published book, which is Cultural Confrontations in English as well. Okay, so his translations in Arabic include Muslims in American History, New Voices of Arabia, Globalectics, which was written by Ngugi wa Thiong'o, and Do Ethics Have a Chance in a World of Consumers by Zygmunt Bauman, who is a very important intellectual figure nowadays. Okay. As for the prizes, he earned the Book of the Year prize from the Saudi Ministry of Culture, Sultan Qaboos Prize, and the Best Book Prize from the Bahrain Book Exhibit. Professor Saad today is going to talk to us about comparative translation, and it's just for us to see how we should connect really between the disciplines, not treat them as separate fields. I invite you all to welcome with me Professor Saad.
صباح الخير للجميع. كل الشكر لجامعة الكويت كلية الآداب قسم اللغة الإنجليزية وللدكتورة ماري تيريزا، ولكني أود أن تكون بداية تهنئة الكويت بعيدها الوطني المناسبة العظيمة. والحقيقة أنا لست غريبا على حتى جامعة الكويت، سبقا تشرفت بالدخول هنا لكن منذ سنوات بعيدة نسبيا، ويسعدني فعلا أن أكون ضمن هذه التظاهرة العلمية الرائعة بهذه الورقة التي عدلت عنوانها يعني تعديل خفيف فيه يعني a loss of modesty. It is still comparative translation, but now contemplating the divide instead of notes towards a conception. Well, translators are travelers who visit foreign lands and report back on what they saw. Travelogues, what travelers usually produce, can of course be either accurate or inaccurate. Most often they are a mixture. However, unlike old times when only the traveler saw the foreign lands, in modern times most people have access to those lands and can check, verify, and when necessary, contest and accept or reject what the traveler reported back. Similarly, the text that the translator renders is seen by many as either previously visited or can be visited anytime. With the increase in language acquisition worldwide, an increasing number of people can read in languages other than their own, or can speak them. They see themselves, therefore, as qualified enough to judge a translation on the level of accuracy and even on the level of rhetorical competency. This situation is not far from what happens in many other areas of creative activity, where language competency convinces many to see themselves as poets, fiction writers, or critics of those fields, among others. Only when one comes closer to any of those fields or develops more mature awareness of the nature of such pursuits that he or she can realize the challenges involved in trying to be a poet, novelist, critic, or, yes, translator. Of all types of translation, literary translation requires a special language competency. More than that, it requires an ability to appreciate literature in its wider scope as a multilinguistic creative activity. All too often, literary translation is a comparative act, a process of joining two or more texts by looking at them from the standpoint where they manifest homogeneity or distinctiveness, otherwise difficult or even impossible to see. When we translate, we compare, and vice versa. This is an aspect of translation that many of those outside the field do not usually notice. Sometimes even those in the field do not notice it either. Translation, and I mean here literary translation, doesn't only render a foreign text into one's own language or vice versa. It is also an enabling act of comparative literary analysis and understanding. It is also a situation where cultural linguistic divides open up to the incomprehensible and the untranslatable. That is what I will try to highlight in the following remarks. A basic premise in the comparative aspect of translation is that it is a literary translation, and that it therefore involves more than one text in two or more different languages. Like any other literary translation, it has to be sensitive to the literariness of the text. But unlike the others, it has to pay close attention not only to cultural homogeneities, but also to cultural divides, the proximities among texts, as well as the distances keeping them apart. And thus, be prepared at the end to accept that there are cases where much of the word, term, or text cannot, as a whole, be read. All of this, and perhaps more, is part of the act of finding equivalents, sometimes where equivalents are impossible to find. Instances of such cases and efforts abound in the history of literary and comparative translation. Those instances are well known, but I will add to them a personal case that might not stand on the same footing in terms of results, yet it seems to me at least quite revealing. The story by the Argentine writer Jorge Luis Borges about the difficulty faced by the Muslim philosopher Ibn Rushd in trying to translate two Greek terms, tragedy and comedy, is as intriguing as it is revealing. In Averroes' Search, that's the title of Borges' story, Borges highlights cultural differences in a representative situation where the translator is puzzled by the presence of concepts in one literature that have no equivalent in the other. Arabic has no equivalent to the two Greek terms. The solution he comes up with, according to Borges, of course, is not a solution as much as overlooking the dilemma. Tragedy, Rushd says, is madih. Comedy is hijab, or satire. The translation process made the literate comparison unavoidable, a point rendered obvious despite the fictitiousness of the situation. A major point in Borges' story is obviously that there are instances of cultural limitation, forcing one culture to see alien phenomena in terms that are more congenial to its own. Lacking the concepts of tragedy and comedy, an Arab thinker, in this case, can only resort to his repertoire of terminology, regardless of whether or not they accurately correspond to foreign concepts. The American critic Harold Bloom would have seen in such a situation an instance of creative influence, or misprision, as he calls it. An example of seeing things not as they are, but as they are not. Bloom is not concerned, of course, about cultural relations, but his theory of the anxiety of influence can be helpful in explaining, though partially, Ibn Rushd's dilemma. That cultural dilemma, or impasse, is hardly unique in the history of the attempts by translators, philosophers, or critics to see cultures across the divide. The attempt to examine distances between them and contemplate the possibilities of bridging whatever gaps are found. In the late 18th century, the British philologist Sir William Jones, who was an Orientalist and jurist as well, attempted a similar act of bridging gaps. In his translation, in reality, not in fiction this time, as in Borges, of the Arabic mu'allaqat, finding no equivalent for mu'allaqat in English, or even qasida, the word qasida, in its Arabic connotations, Jones resorted to classical terminology, classical in the sense of Greek and Roman terminology, by calling the mu'allaqat odes, use the word ode. Jones tried to see the closest genre that could accommodate Arabic poems. The Greek-Roman genre appeared to the British translator as the closest form, but his reasons were not purely literary or critical. He saw himself as championing a foreign literature that he saw no less worthy of attention among the English literati, at a turning point in the history of English poetry. At such a point, when the new classical period was gradually giving way to a new one, the Romantic, to settle in, the ode was becoming a popular poetic form. So popular, in fact, that most of the great poems in the English Romantic period were cast in the ode form, as all specialists know. Jones was apparently very much in line with the change, and casting the Arabic poems as odes was going to satisfy the new taste and facilitate the change, that change. His effort was at the onset of what the French Raymond Schwab came to call the Oriental Renaissance, in a book with that title. An agent of that Renaissance, Jones was engaged in East-West comparative effort, portrait. Like that portrait. Jones's comparison led him to a misreading of other cultures, of another culture. A misreading that seemed unavoidable for the act to be accomplished. To what extent can we say that such instances are prevalent in the history of literary relations? So prevalent, in other words, that we can describe their recurrence as forming a phenomenon. I have come across a number of them, but cannot claim to say that they are so widespread. The instances I came across include 3 other major Western writers: Oscar Wilde, William Butler Yeats, and Roland Barthes. As turned out, however, the cases were comparative translations. The cases where comparative translation led to unbridgeable gaps are also known in non-Arab and non-Western cultures. These are other instances. I shall touch upon some of those, but I will begin with the personal encounter of the lacunae in translation. I will begin by my personal story. I was translating a story by Borges as a student. I was a student at the time. And the story was entitled The Book of Sand. The story included a reference to the Bible, which I immediately translated into al-Muqaddas. But the problem resulted from the fact that the same story included a reference to another holy book, also to be translated as al-Muqaddas. A footnote was thus necessary and could take care of the problem. But it opened my eye to the fact that I knew no equivalent, I personally knew no equivalent to the Western word Bible. Muslims usually refer to the 2 books of the Bible separately as Al-Ahd al-Qadim wal Ahd al-Jadid. Christians, of course, know Al-Injil, whereas the Jews know Torah. But only in the Christian West do we find the 2 books combined in the Latinate word that's derived from the root biblio, or book, so the Bible. I couldn't find an Arabic word for Bible, one word for the 2 books together. A cultural difference, no question, but one that opens up a gap in cultural understanding. And it was a gap that worried me. I felt that something was wrong, missing, and needed action, which was to explain the problem away by adding a footnote. That's what I did, just a footnote. The Japanese confronted a similar, though more complicated, instance when they wanted to translate the Russian writer Tolstoy, as we are told by the Japanese scholar Takayuki Yokota Murakami. Early Japanese translators, we are told, from the Meiji period, such as Futabatai Shinai, faced the cultural difference in the form of love relationships among the 2 sexes, which suggested equality that did not exist in Japanese culture before the Meiji period. The term "I love you" posed a poignant problem when said by a woman to a man. No Japanese cultural setting allowed such a term, and the Japanese translators had to use the terms that meant "I might die for you," as more befitting a woman in addressing her husband or lover. The accommodating effort of the Japanese bespoke an attempt to bridge a gap, even at the expense of the local language and culture. That such an accommodation was a positive opening up is beside the point. It is the attitude towards difference and its consequence that we are tracing here. Now consider the attitude of the Japanese towards love in comparison to that of a major Western poet such as William Butler Yeats. William Butler Yeats, that's I think an interesting example. In a poem that uncovers another kind of cultural difference. The poem is entitled A Gift from Harun al-Rashid, published in 1937, 2 years before Yeats' death. In that poem, Yeats depicts a love relationship between a Bedouin, Bedouin woman, not a Bedouin woman, Bedouin comes later, between a Byzantine doctor and translator in the court of Harun al-Rashid, and a Bedouin woman who was presented as a gift in a situation almost as imaginary, but no less telling than the one depicted by Borges. When the Byzantine semi-Western because he was almost Greek, his name was Qusba ibn Luqa. They all know him historically, you know. When that doctor, who seems to represent Yeats himself, when he marries the Arab lady, a gap unfurls, with no hope for it to be filled. The very concept of love is such a gap because Qusba cannot see how marriage can be consummated without love, how a wife can be offered as a gift. A man who, quote, accepted the Byzantine faith, these are Yeats' words, who accepted the Byzantine faith that seems unnatural to Arabian minds, the Arab bride proves to have a superior knowledge that the well-educated Qusba can only witness with awe. And I'll read a few lines that Yeats writes here. A livelong hour. This is spoken by Qusba bin Luqa talking about his beloved while she spoke to him. A livelong hour, she seemed the learned man and I the child. Truths without father came. Truths that no book of all the uncounted books that I have read, nor thought out of her mind or mine begot, self-born, high-born, and solitary truths. The woman's superior knowledge is not in fact strange to Yeats' personal endeavors, in which he tried to fulfill his semi-philosophical, largely theosophical thirst for spiritual alternatives to the rationality dominating Western civilization at the time. His attempts at automatic writing, the writings performed by the Bedouin woman, he says she performed the automatic writing. Those writings were congenial, in fact, to the surrealist movement prevalent in Europe in the early decades of the 20th century, a movement that developed out of similar impulses that also looked eastward in some of its works. Yeats' poem creates a situation of comparative untranslatability, not dissimilar to that of Borges. The other examples I'll have to overlook because time doesn't allow us. I wish I could read just the example of Roland Barthes when he was in Japan. Roland Barthes, when he saw I'll just tell it very quickly. Roland Barthes saw all those names of streets which he couldn't read. And of course, among other difficulties in appreciating Japanese language. And he wrote these lines, which are really, really interesting. I'll just finish with them. He says, the dream, to know a foreign and strange tongue, yet not to understand it. To perceive in it a difference without the possibility of having this difference recuperated by the superficial sociability of language, communication, or vulgarity. To know, refracted positively in a new language, the impossibility of ours. In one word, to descend in the untranslatable, to feel its shock without softening it until the whole Occident is in us, the whole Occident in us is shaken, and we undo the rights of our paternal language. Well, I'll have to stop here, and maybe other examples can be discussed later on in the discussion. Thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Al-Bazai, for this very interesting lecture, although you've opened up with untranslatable, and we're all expecting efforts at translating, but this is something which perhaps encourages us more to. Okay, questions? Yes, Dr. Farah?
Okay, is there a microphone? Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Introduce yourself.
All right, when it comes to the untranslatable, it always comes up with literally translated. This is taken for granted. Now, my question is about the dilemmas you have talked about. For example, the story you translated and grappled with the two terms referring to the Bible. It has to do with whether this is conceptual or not. If this is, if such a thing is said in passing, what difference does it make? Whether you refer to it as the Holy Book or the Bible or what have you. So does it matter? If it is within the blood, if it matters, yes, I do agree with you. If it doesn't matter, if I were you, I would just either one or the other and just keep going. Thank you.
Any other questions?
دكتور سعد يعطيك العافية على المحاضرة الطيبة. I just want to inquire, make a comment, and that comment might be a question or counter-argument. In the context of discourse analysis, we have something called the text, co-text, context, genre, theme, until you reach the culture. And in this comparative sense in literature, I would like to take it to the global culture, another dimension. So within this taxonomy, Holidayan view of text, I would like to add the comparativeness to translation in this context, in the literature context, and in the examples that you've mentioned. Are those differences all fall within a level under the genre itself? So if it is a poem, then it is within the poem itself. If it is a story, then it is within the story. As you refer to it as a social context of the text. So this is very local within the text itself. Dr. Fadl correctly addressed it to be something contextual. Yes, but if we go literature usually, comparative literature, we view it as something beyond the text, something of a human project, if human nature. So it means a literary person produced a poem or a novel or a description of a scene which is certain, in my view, similar to someone in Japan, someone in the Arabic context, someone in English. Your example of expressing "I love you" in the Chinese, well, I think it's clearly dialed in the Syrian dialect, Taqdirni, when the lady addresses her husband. I think isn't the same thing, Dr. Layla? It might be the same sense.
It's different,
So
she
this
says.
gives you the nationalness.
I love you too, buddy.
Internationalness of the human feeling expressed in literature. So how would you like to address that? Thank you.
Okay, we have one more question. Okay, can you make it very short because we're very short questions, please.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Is this on? Yeah, go back. Okay. Thank you very much for your presentation. Yeah. So I'll just shout out.
Try to open it, please.
It doesn't work. It doesn't seem to work. Anyway, I mean, from the English department. Okay. Is it working? Microphone's wasting time. Now-
It's like physics.
Is it working now? Can you hear me? Okay. So, modern translation in general, irrespective of its field or branch, cannot, to my knowledge, cannot do without a corpus. And here we're talking about parallel corpora or comparable corpora. I'm not really sure, Professor, how familiar you are with corpora and translation. And here we're talking about ما يسمى باللغة العربية مدونات النصوص. And here we're talking about, a huge body of text in the source language and a huge body of text in this target language. And there are all sorts of types of corpora. My question, Professor, number one, I'm not really sure how familiar you are with different types of corpora in translation. The question is, how realistic is it to have a parallel or maybe a comparable corpus when it comes to a literary translation? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think you can hear me. I'm a little bit loud. So I'll follow Dr. Lafi's introduction. It could be a question, a comment, a remark, a counter-argument. Discourse it as you may wish. But thank you very much, Dr. Saad. Very intriguing. I've got just two comments. One is about the concept and the naming. Tragedy, comedy, etc. If you don't produce the thing, we cannot name it. So we take it either with its name or we don't take it. It's like technological things, etc. Medieval Arabic translation borrowed most of the time, particularly in the early days, because they couldn't come up with a name to fit the full concept of the Greek, Chinese, etc., or even Farsi. So the name of it is like a child. You have your own child, you name it. You don't go around the house or the neighborhood asking people, what can I name this? I think this is very important when it comes to particularly cultural concepts such as literary criticism terms. The other point is the untranslatability of Roland Barthes or the others. Once I say this is untranslatable, I think I'm translating. Because the concept zero does not mean there is nothing. There is something and we are always looking for it. That's why we went to the moon, because we have been trying to fill that unit called zero. So untranslatable, I think, as Dr. Farghad said, maybe it's a ploy by people who do not want to delve, to dive in. There is always a way of finding something. And the example of the Kitab al-Muqaddas or Injil, however you want to translate it, it depends on the overall. I'll go to Dr. Lafi's context, subtext, the co-text, or call it whatever, the universe of discourse. That could help very much so in terms of what to choose, whether just to go for something generic like Kitab al-Muqaddas or I don't know, Kitab Diyana al-Masihiyya, and then you are out of the loop. So there could be, I think, ways of circumverting the problems when it comes to literary translation. I think the corpus and corpora studies may be very well helpful in this particular context.
I'm not really sure about literary translation, though, but yeah, I'll
Okay, let's move on to excuse me, Dr. Alain. Just to finish up, this will be the last comment because we just have time. I don't want to be late. Okay, 1 minute.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Saad, for this constructive presentation. I have just a very small question that has to do with al-mu'allaqat as a type of poetry that is peculiar to the Arabic language. And I was just wondering why we couldn't introduce this to the English literature or to the English language as it is, as hung poems rather than ode. And because, you know, al-mu'allaqat has its own idiosyncratic characteristics, which is different from the ode, which is different from the normal poem. So, since we are talking about accepting the other, why the other cannot accept us as we are, and to introduce al-mu'allaqat as hung poems, as a genre that is autonomous on its own rights. Thank you very much.
I must admit that, well, that saves me actually, because I'm not sure I understood some of the questions, because perhaps of the differences or the divides in specialties. I mean, some of the terminology wasn't clear to me.
They were pragmatic all the time, you are philosophical. That's the clash.
Well, I think we'll have enough time to discuss any of these issues together, given the limited time given to us now. So I'll comment on the idea of untranslatability, if I may, because it's so central to this paper. The idea actually is not new. There has, in 2011, a huge dictionary was published in French about the untranslated terminology, terms that cannot be translated, not in the sense that they cannot be translated literally, but that when you translate them, so much remains untranslated. How much you try, you will take into the other language part of the concept, not the whole concept.
This happens everywhere, not only in the translation of terminology.
No, but this is, now in a table you don't have that problem, for example. I mean, in pragmatic translation, in a menu, you don't have that problem. But when it comes to a philosophical concept, such as those used by Heidegger, for example, or by Sartre, well, you'll have a problem there. I mean, you will transmit only part of the concept. Well, the dictionary was written really by a big number of philosophers and critics and sociologists. The dictionary was translated into English, but given, of course, the fact that a great deal hasn't yet been translated, remained untranslated. The point, I think, is something we face every time. It's not that we cannot translate, it is simply to develop the awareness that there are concepts that are difficult to translate, and sometimes even impossible. As for al-mu'allaqat is صفة, adjective, and it's not really a genre. They are poems simply hung on the Kaaba. So you don't translate al-mu'allaqat. You say that they were hung on the Kaaba, but they were poems. Now, what kind of poems they were? That's the issue. Jones tried to, solve the problem by saying that they are odes. The closest thing to them in our language and our terminology is ode. But of course, they are not odes. If you look at the Greek odes or the Roman odes, they are not. Yeah, but there is no English word for even قصيدة itself. I mean, the قصد the implications of القصد وما يتضمن what that implies.
We have وعيات now.
Exactly. So it is a big problem, and I apologize if I could not tackle all the points made by my colleagues here, and I hope that we can talk about them later. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Thank you, Professor Bazai, and thank you all for attending and for participating. And yeah, we're left still with the untranslatable to try and reach that. Thank you.
For the next session, please. 10:30 sharp, please. Thank you. My name is Saad bin طفلة العجمي, and I was honored to have actually been asked to preside over this session. Before I do that, I would like to thank my colleagues in the department, chaired by my esteemed colleague, Dr. Lafi Al-Harbi, for bestowing me this opportunity, this honor to chair this session. In so doing, I would like to also raise a few points of clarification, dare I say points of order, kindly in respect to the speakers, make sure that your mobile phones are turned off or on the silent mode. Secondly, I'm going to be as punctual as I could, but I will not thoroughly dissociate myself from our Arabic heritage of lack of punctuality. I'll do my best. I shall give each speaker 15 minutes. But before I do that, allow me to introduce the honorable panelists. Dr. يوسف البدر من الهيئة العامة للتعليم التطبيقي والتدريب، والذي سيتحدث عن أصالة الكويت عبر أمثالها، ترجمة الأمثال الشعبية الكويتية إلى اللغة الإنجليزية. وبكل فخر سأقدم لكم الدكتور يوسف كأحد أبناء قسم اللغة الإنجليزية في جامعة الكويت، وكان أحد أبنائنا وطلبتنا. بعد ذلك سأقدم الدكتور بكري عزام من جامعة الكويت، الزميل في نفس القسم، والضيف الكريم الذي شرفنا بحضوره من الجامعة الهاشمية، الدكتور أسطي الذيبان. سأحدثكم عن مواضيعهم في وقته. Dr. Yusuf, the floor is yours.
شكرا جميعا. 15 or 20? 15. اوكي. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، مساكم الله بالخير وصبحكم الله بالخير جميعا. اشكركم جميعا على الحضور، وشكرا دكتور سعد. كنت احد طلابك في ماده Historical Linguistics سنه 2004-2005. حتى كان في كلمه etymology ما كنت اعرفها، ما كنت اعرف معناها. بعد سنتين قرأت لي كتاب اسمه etymology. الحمد لله سبحانه وتعالى. صارت الكويت عبر امثالها ترجمه الامثال الشعبيه الكويتيه. كنت قاعد اترجم اثناء الدكتوراه مقتطفات من مسلسل درب الزلك من اللهجه الكويتيه الى اللغه الانجليزيه، من الكلمات التي صادفتها التي يصعب ترجمتها كلمه عاد. اسمع عاد، يلا عاد اقعد معاي، عاد اقول لك الى اخره. من الكلمات هذه التي لها عده ترجمات تحتسب على حسب الموقف وعلى حسب السياق طبعا. اللهجه الكويتيه طبعا من اللهجات المحكيه طبعا، يقال انها كانت موجوده سابقا من زمان. يعني كاول وثيقه يذكر كلمه الكويت فيها سنه 1709 ميلادي، هي وثيقه مرتضى بن علوان اللي ذكر ان وجود الكويت كانت موجوده انذاك. لكن اللهجه الكويتيه، كلمه اللهجه الكويتيه هل هي نذيره الكويت فقط ولا الاقليم الجغرافي كله من جنوبها شمالها شرقها غربها؟ طبعا هذا يعني موضوع ثاني ما اطول فيه. الامثال الشعبيه او ترجمه الامثال الشعبيه راح نتكلم عن يعني نقطه، لكن الموضوع بكبره اللي هو حبيت يعني اشارككم ترجماتي. يعني هو عباره عن جمع او صناعة معجم بالأمثال الشعبية الكويتية وأشارككم فيها ترجماتي وأسمع آراءكم طبعا، راح أستفيد منكم إن شاء الله. وأنا طبعا أتكلم عن الموضوع هذا. وتلك بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، وتلك الأمثال نضربها للناس لعلهم يتفكرون. الدراسة هذه طبعا تحت مظلة علم اسمه بارينيولوجي، هو علم دراسة الأمثال وجمعها ودراستها دراسة تاريخية ولغوية. والفرق بين المثل والحكمة والقول المأثور يقول رحمه الله محمد البطل يتميز المثل بالثبات، أي من أنه من المسكوكات اللغوية التي يرددها العامة عبر العصور دون تغير يذكر، ويعرف المثل الذي يتطرق إلى قاعدة تحكم سلوكا عاما باسم الحكمة، فإذا تميز فوق ذلك بجمال الأسلوب والصياغة صار قولا مأثورا. وطبعا أضيف إلى ذلك العالم الأمريكي الدكتور الامريكي الاستاذ في الفولكلور واللغه الالمانيه وولفغانغ ريدر بجامعه فيرمونت، وهو ابرز منظري علم الامثال في العصر الحديث، حيث يجمع بين مجالين مرتبطين ارتباطا قويا، هو الفولكلور والصناعه الانثروبولوجيه. ويقول ريدر بتعريفه للمثل هو جمله قصيره او عباره موجزه يرددها العامه وتمثل حكمه او حقيقه نسبيه او سلوكا اخلاقيا او حكما عاما، وتكون لغته مجازيه وصياغته ثابته، فيخزن في الذاكرة بسهولة ويستدعى بيسر عند الحاجة، ومن ثم ينتقل المثل من جيل إلى جيل دون تغيير يذكر من ناحية المحتوى على الأقل. وإبراهيم النظام يعرف المثل الشعبي والمثل بشكل عام عبارة عن يجتمع في المثل 4 لا تجتمع في غيره من الكلام: إيجاز اللفظ، إصابة المعنى، وحسن التشبيه، وجودة الكناية، فهو نهاية البلاغة. ويضيف إلى ذلك إبراهيم السامرائي بتعريفه للأمثال الشعبية: لعل الأمثال مصدر الألوان الأدبية في الكشف عن المجتمعات ولا سيما البدائيه منها، وذلك لانها تصور البيئه الطبيعيه وعلاقه الانسان بتلك البيئه. اهداف البحث بشكل سريع وبسيط هو صناعه معجم بالامثال الشعبيه والاقوال الماثوره والتعامل الاصطلاحيه في اللهجه الكويتيه مع مقابلاتها الثقافيه طبعا، ودراسه دراسه دلاليه ومعجميه. المصادر اللي اتبعتها طبعا امثال، كلمه امثال هذه تاتي بمعنى adages ولا proverbs ولا wise sayings. من الامثال او من الكتب التي طبعا استعنت بها هو اول كتاب يوثق اللهجه او امثال اللهجه الكويتيه، هو للباحث الراحل خالد سعود الزيد، كان عنوانه من الامثال العاميه طبعه 1961، فوثق فيها 812 مثل من الامثال الكويتيه. ويعرف المثل الكويتي على انه جاء ولد بيئتين متناقضتين وصوره لحياتين مختلفتين اشد الاختلاف. الأولى تمثل حياة البدو وعرب الجاهلية، والثانية تمثل حياة الحضر والأمة البحرية التي لا تعرف عن الصحراء إلا بقدر ما يعرف البدوي عن البحار وأقوار المحيطات. مباشرة بعد 4 سنوات صدر كتاب آخر اسمه الأمثال الدارجة في الكويت لعبد الله النوري رحمه الله، من جزئين طبعا، ووثق في 1389 مثل. ويعرف المثل الكويتي على انه من وحي الفطره، لهذا نرى العامي يحفظ من الامثال ما لا يحفظه المثقف بالثقافه الحديثه، لان هذا قضى ماضي عمره بالمدارس ثم بالوظائف، فهو مشغول بتلك وبهذه عن الانسجام في مجتمعه الفطري. والأضخم من ذلك هو العمل الضخم طبعا من 4 أجزاء، وطبع سنة 1978 على مدار 6 سنوات إلى غاية 1984. هو الأمثال الكويتية المقارنة لأحمد المشرفومي وصفوة كمال، وعدد الأمثال الكويتية التي وثقوها هي 2206 أمثال. ومن على الصعيد البحثي الأكاديمي أبحاث محمود عزيز ياسين في الأقوال الشعبية والأمثال الشعبية في اللهجة الكويتية واللغة العربية، هي كويتي Arabic Idioms سنة 78 وسبوكن Arabic Proverbs سنة 88. مستويات الأمثال في الكويت هي أمثال عربية طبعا كأي دولة عربية متداولة في الكويت وغير الكويت، وأمثال خليجية متداولة في الجزيرة العربية أكثر مما هي متداولة في باقي الدول العربية، وأمثال كويتية متداولة في الكويت لكن لم أجد لها مقابل في اللهجات المجاورة، لكن قد يكون هناك مقابل في اللهجات المجاورة لكن بصيغ أخرى أو بمقابلات أخرى. الأمثال العربية تنقسم إلى آيات قرآنية مستوحاة من آيات قرآنية، مثلا لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها، أو مستوحاة من أحاديث شريفة، المرء على دين خليله، مستوحاة من الشعر العربي، ما كل ما يتمنى المرء يدركه. أمثال عربية مولدة، كل الطرق تؤدي إلى روما، وأمثال عربية عامة مثلا اتقي شر من أحسنت إليه. والأمثال الخليجية نذكر منها يعني البعض منها الدين عم عين، وبعض الأحيان في اللهجة الحديثة يقولون عمات عين، على هامان الفرعون أخذنا بشراع وميداف، اللي ما يعرف الصقر يشوي، يصوم يفطر على بصلة، اللي ما يعدك راس مال لا تعد الفائدة. لكن بعض الأمثال هذه متداولة يمكن في بعض اللهجات الغير خليجية لكن بصيغ أخرى. طبعا الأمثال الكويتية نفس الصيغة، وأمثال كويتية شوف حط لكم علامة استفهام، هل هي من مواليد الكويت أو غير يعني خارجها، يعني أتتنا من الخارج أو أنها انتقلت عبر قنوات فضائية من الكويت إلى الخارج، لكن أنا لا أجزم أنها كويتية بحتة. على مثال على ذلك منطق طبلة قالنا قبله، إذا دلك سهيل لا تعمل السيل، لا بغيت تضمها اسأل عنها، لا حبتك عيني ما ضامك الدهر. فراح نشوف ترجمة بعض الأمثال هذه، ونشوف مثال آخر على حول ترجمة المثل الكويتي بمقابلاتها بالأمثال الأخرى. مثال يطاح الجمل كثرت سكاكينه. في اليمن لا عقر الثور كثرت السكاكين. في العراق البعير من يوقع تكثر سكاكينه. في فلسطين إذا وقع الثور بيكثر السلاخينه. في مصر لما توعى البقرة تكثر سكاكينها. وفي المغرب منين تطيح البقرة تكثر الجنوة. طبعا شوف اللهجات هذه كلها موجودة كلها في كتاب أحمد بن الرومي وصفوة كمال. طبعا شوف اختلافات بين الحيوانات الجمل والبعير والثور والبقرة إلى آخره. خطوات ترجمة الأمثال، طبعا أنا أسمع المثل بالإنجليزي ومن ثم ترجمة عربي ومن ثم اللهجة الكويتية. الأمثال هذه مستوحاة من متابعتي لمسلسلات وأفلام أجنبية، ما يقارب 2000 إلى 2500 حلقة من عدة مسلسلات على مدار 7 سنوات تقريبا. ثم ترجمتها ترجمة حرفيا للاستفادة، طبعا أشوف تفاصيل الحروف والمعاني، ومن ثم أجد بحث عن مقابلاتها بالعربية ومن ثم عن مقابلاتها باللهجة الكويتية. أمثلة على ذلك: All that glitters is not gold. مثل مشهور جدا هو معروف ليس كل ما يلمع ذهب، معروف جدا في الوطن العربي، لكن الترجمة العربية المقابل العربي يكون ما كل أصفر دينارا لصفرته. لكن باللهجة الكويتية شنو نقول؟ ما كل مدلقم يوز أو مو كل مدلقم يوز. ولها في مثل ثاني طبعا، ما كل أو مو كل بيضة شحمة ولا كل سودة حمى، هذا من كتاب أحمد بن الرومي. مثال آخر: beggars can't be choosers. عندنا لو ترجمة حرفيا المتسولون لا يملكون حق الاختيار. وباللغة العربية الفصحى عندنا مثل قريب وألا وهو طفيلي ومقترح، وبالكويتي شو نقول؟ ضرار ويتشرط أو متشرط. عندنا صيغتين. صحيح. صحيح. Every jack has his Jill. Every jack has his Jill. طبعا جاك وجيل هو عبارة عن اسمين يعني ما لهم شغل، يعني مو مستوحى من أسماء أو من أشخاص فعليين، لكن هو تقارب في جاك وجيل في الصوت. طبعا بداية الحروف. لكل جاك وجيل لو بنترجمها مثلا كترجمة حرفية، لكن بالعربية وجدت المقابل ألا وهو كل ميسر لمن خلق له. ونقول باللهجة أو باللغة العربية الزواج قسم ونصيب، أو بعض الأحيان في بعض اللهجات العربية نقول الله يهني سعيد سعيدة. لو نبي صيغة كجاك جيل سعيد سعيدة كتقارب بين الاسمين. You can't teach an old dog new tricks. ترجمة حرفيا تطلع معنا: ليس بإمكانك أن تعلم كلبا عجوزا خدعا جديدة. لكن المثل العربي والعلم في الكبر كالنقش بالحجر. وباللهجة الكويتية وبلهجات أخرى نقول: بعد ما شاب ولده الكتاب. هذا مثل شعر صحيح. It's no use crying over spilled milk. لا جدوى من البكاء على اللبن المسكوب. لكن باللغة العربية الفصحى نقول عندنا 3 أمثلة: سبب السيف العدل، أو حال الأجل دون الأمل، أو الآية القرآنية: قضي الأمر الذي فيه تستفتيان. في اللهجة الكويتية أحد يقول لي؟ ليه فات الفوت ما ينفع الصوت. It's no use crying over spilled milk. نفس الشيء. Old is gold من أشهر الأمثال اللي عندنا باللغة الإنجليزية. طبعا قديم ولكنه ثمين. لو نشوفه باللغة العربية الفصحى وجدت لها ترجمة اللي هي ما الحب إلا للحبيب الأولي. لكن لو ترجمة باللغة أو بالعربية اللهجة العربية الكويتية راح نلقى عتيج الصوف ولا يزيد البريسر. طبعا البريسر كلمة فارسية بمعنى الحرير.
خير بالعتاد.
The leopard does not change his spots. الترجمة حرفيا تطلع معنا: لا يستطيع النمر أن يغير رقطه. باللغة العربية الفصحى تطلع معاي: الطبع أغلب. طبعا بالكويتي شو نقول؟ مطبوع ما يسمع طبعه او عن طبعه. والمثل الاخر لقيته اللي هو القط العود ما يتربى. The spirit is willing but the flesh is weak. تطلع معنا الروح وتواضع ولكن جسد ضعيف. طبعا الترجمه الحرفيه بالكويت نقول العين بصيره واليد قصيره.
هذا عربي.
ترجمه لهذا.
هذا عربي.
بالضبط. jump the gun طبعا بالعربيه نقول يسبق الاحداث. عندنا مثل مقارب بالكويتي الا وهو ذهب الدواء قبل الفلعه. كأقرب ترجمه له. out of sight out of mind طبعا الترجمه العربيه المشهوره بعيد عن العين بعيد عن القلب. لكن وجدت لها ترجمه اخرى او مقابل اخر بالكويتي طبعا جميل الا وهو من غاب عن عيني سال عن بالي. كأقرب مثال ترجمه له. بعض الأحيان عندنا مثلين باللغة الإنجليزية تترجم إلى مثل واحد بالكويتي أو أكثر. Everybody's business is nobody's business أو inquire not what is in others pot اللي هو من ترك ما يعنيه امتهن بما لا يعنيه. أو بالكويتي نقول لا تدخل قصك في شيء ما يخصك. They that tax must pay the fiddler. يعني واجهت صعوبة في ترجمة هذا المثل. طبعا fiddler هو عازف الكمانجة أو الكمان اللي هو إني أرقص وهو يعزف. لكن مو معناته اني لازم ادفع له، اقدر ما ادفع له. لكن وجدت له مثل ما ادري اذا يضبط معاه ولا لا اللي هو يعمل شراله من حلاله عله. يمكن يمكن راح نتناقش بعد شوي. You don't know what you have until it's gone. لو نشوفه بالكويتي شو نقول؟ ما تعرف قديري لما تجرب غيري. They set the wolf to guard the sheep. مثل شائع جدا في الوطن العربي ايضا اللي هو حاميها حراميها. No pain, no gain. تترجم الكويتي من يقول لي؟ من بغل تحت ما يقول أحد. أقرب ترجمة للغة الإنجليزية.
2 minutes.
Yes. 2 minutes. As different as chalk and cheese. As different as chalk and cheese. طبعا لها عدة ترجمات هي. اللي هو أين الثرى من الثريا. اللي لها بالكويتي الفرق السماء عن الأرض. أنت وين وهو وين. شياب
2 minutes.
شياب الإياب الله خلق وفرق. بعض الأحيان عندنا 6 ترجمات لمثل واحد يكون عندنا بالإنجليزي مثل fair without, foul within. وتترجم بالكويتي طبعا من برا الله من داخل يعني والله. معروف طبعا باللهجات العربية. معروف جدا. صحيح. Idioms sayings and clichés طبعا هي مرات تكون idioms باللغة الإنجليزية لكن تترجم إلى proverb باللهجة الكويتية. راح نشوف أمثلة على ذلك. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. الباب يسع جبل. معروف طبعا باللهجات العربية. أو باللهجة الكويتية نقول دفعة مردي والهوى شرجي كمثل ملاحي. How dare you كيف تجرؤ على ذلك؟ ترجمتها باللهجة الكويتية فوق شينك قوات عينك كأقرب ترجمة لها. We couldn't get a word in edgeways نقدر نترجمها في اللهجة الكويتية. خذنا بشراع وميداف. شوف الأمثال الملاحية. As long as I'm alive تترجم اللهجة الكويتية. دام هالكور ايش هذا؟ صح. واخيرا اخر واحده في مصطلح شائع في اللهجه في اللغه الانجليزيه are expecting السؤال عن الاب او زوج والزوجه اذا كانوا متوقعين الولاده. طبعا expecting احنا نترجمه بالكويتي عندنا مثل او ايديوم اللي هو ماكو شيء بالطريق. كلمه اكو ماكو كلمتين او كلمه مشتركه بين اللهجات العراقيه واللهجه الكويتيه. وحتى نخلص الوقت. Thank you very much for your
شكرا دكتور لالتزام الوقت. سأعطي الآن المجال لزميلي الدكتور بكري العزام من قسم اللغة الإنجليزية وهو أستاذ للترجمة والثقافة إلى جانب مقررات أخرى يدرسها في القسم. وسيتحدث عن الفخر self-exaltation في the translation of شعر أو معلقة عنترة ابن شداد. تفضل.
Thank you very much indeed for introducing me. The paper I'm going to talk about or to present is entitled The Theme of Fakhr, Self-Exaltation in the translation of Antara's Mu'allaqa in English. Before I start talking about my paper, I'd like to briefly refer to the social life of Arabs at Jahiliyyah time. The social structure at Jahiliyyah time was socially built or formed. In battle time situations, fights were tribal driven, and as such people used to look for or to look at their tribes as sacred and sensitive. Tribes used to fight over simple issues such as a fountain or small grassy land, or even over an animal like the battle that happened or lasted for 40 years and was called Harb Da'aswa al-Ghabra. Poetry was very basic at that time, and all tribes used to create their own poets in order to defend them in peaceful as in warlike situations. Amidst that unsettled situation, the star of Antar appeared, and as a poet he was known as too famous and at the same time charismatic. As Antar was black due to his mother was Abyssinian, he was degraded not only by the tribes around him but also by his father, and that generated in himself, inside himself, the sense of avenge one day. The situation being so, Antar dedicated his life to produce poems that represent his sense or feeling toward that degrading situation. Therefore, he started his poems with reference to horse, spears, swords, and beheading fighters who used to fight. One day, he wrote these lines, among, of course, his many poems, representing his situation. إن كنت في عدد العبيد فهمتي فوق الثريا والسماك الأعزل، أو أنكرت فرسان عبس نسبتي فسنان رمحي والحسام تقرني، وبذابلي ومهندي نلت العلا لا بالقرابة والعديد الأجزل. إن طال عزكم وذلي في الهوى ومن العجائب عزكم وتذللي، لا تسقني ماء الحياة بذلة بل فاسقني بالعز كأس الحنظل. ماء الحياة بذلة كجهنم وجهنم بالعز كأس الحنظل. As far as translation is concerned, it seems very difficult to convey the social and cultural implications that are clear in the Mu'allaqa or in Antar's Mu'allaqa, especially that culture of Arabs at that time was completely different even from the culture of Arabs these days. Concerning or with regard to time, we have a long span of time between Arabs at that time and, let me say, between the Western culture of today. And therefore, what was considered as favorable and lovable and preferred by Arabs at that time is not to be considered likewise in the Western culture. I have selected some examples here which reflect Antar's pride of himself, Antar's self-exaltation. All right. In order to practically prove the reflection of, the senses of self-exaltation in Antar's Mu'allaqa, I have chosen 3 different translations. One produced by Arwen, 1955, another by Sills, 1989, and a third by Clausen, 1881. The first theme, or the first point, where Antar felt so proud of himself, is the one that is concerned with his amal, saying, فإذا شربت فإنني مستهلك مالي وعرضي وافر لم يكلم، وإذا صحوت فما أقصر عن ندى وكما علمت شمائلي وتكرمي. With regard to Mary, he doesn't care about money. What was very important to him, what was considered as sensitive and sacred is وعرضي. فإذا شربت فإنني, I don't care about money. what I care most about is عرضي, my honor, my dignity. And then he says, وإذا صحوت فما أقصر عن ندى. يعني when I get away, وكما علمت شمائلي وتكرم. Of course, he's addressing Abla, his love here. Withholding from taking war spoils. As we all know, people used to fight in order to gain spoils. And if we look at our time, countries are invading other countries in order to for spoils. As for Antara, he didn't care about spoils. What was very important for him is to win the war, and not to take from the spoils left behind the defeated armies or fighters. He says, يخبرك من شهد الوقيعة كأنني أغشى الوغى وأعف عند المغنم. When it comes to, you can say, dispersing the spoils left behind the defeated army, he used to abstain from taking any. And for him, and for most of us sometimes, it may be a good feature. We are not fighting for these spoils, we are fighting to win the battle, no more than that. If we translate this, all the translations have succeeded in rendering the literal meaning into the target language. However, due to the cultural differences between Arabic and English, these valuable features of Arabs at that time and maybe of Arabs of today cannot be obtained or understood likewise. Non-indulgence in reviling opponents. He doesn't feel proud if he, for example, says bad words about his opponents, and even if those opponents attack him verbally. الشاتمي عرضي ولم أشتمهما والنادرين إن لم ألقهما دما. If those talk about me badly, I won't talk in the same manner about them. والنادرين, of course, he is very proud of himself. They swear that if we don't meet you عن ترميم الكل. الشاتمي عرضي ولم أشتمهما والنادرين إن لم ألقهما دمي. They swear that they will kill me, but if they don't meet. Jibali is also another situation where Antara is very proud of himself. أثني علي بما علمت فإنني سمح مخالقتي إذا لم أظلم وإذا ظلمت فإن ظلمي باسل مر مذاقته كطعم العلقم. Again, he's very proud of himself. He doesn't like others to attack him or even to come to his battlefields, and in case that happens, he would fight strongly and defeat his opponents. جادت له كفي بعاجل طعنة بمثقف صدق الكعوب مقوم برحيبة الفرعين يهدي جرسها بالليل معتس الذئاب الذرم. Then, when it comes to war situations, all knights, all fighters of his tribe will be or are impatiently waiting for him to decide the end of the war, saying, يدعون عنتر والرماح كأنها أشطان بئر في لبان أدهم ما زلت أرميه بثغرة نحره ولبانه حتى تسربل بالدم. Here he's saying that all the fighters of his tribe recall Antara when they are badly in need of him, saying يدعون عنتر والرماح كأنها. The spears are one following another like a rope. أشطان بئر في لبان أدهم ما زلت أرميه بثغرة نحره ولبانه حتى تسربل بالدم. Then, even in peaceful situations, he doesn't feel comfortable. He likes war all the time. ولقد شفى نفسي وأذهب سقمها أيل الفوارس ويك عن تراقي. Even when people are in peace, he doesn't like that situation to continue. ولقد شفى نفسي. He feels so happy, so glad when the battle starts and his people, call or recall him, come on, Antara, the fight is to start. As for conclusion, I'd like to be as brief as possible. All right, the paper has come out to the conclusion that rendering such a type of classical Arabic is very difficult into English due to many, you can say, idiosyncrasies that are attached to such a type of text. Let us say the time, the place, the mentality and the way of thinking of Arabs at that time. If we compare these idiosyncrasies of that mu'allaqa, even with us today, I think there will be a very clear gap between the way that people used to think at that time and the way we think these days. Let alone if we compare between our culture and the Western world. Of course, the gap is expected to be large, and it can never be bridged to an extent that all these cultural and social values are rendered or conveyed there in the target language. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Bكري. And that actually means that you have yielded about 5 minutes of your time for our honorable guest here, an esteemed colleague from the Hashemite University, Dr. الذيبان, who asked for more than 15 minutes, and kindly Dr. Azam had actually given him some of his time. Thank you so much. Dr. الذيبان is going to discuss the westernized female as colonizer, victimizer, and demonizer, and the patterns of imperial violence in Arab literature. The floor is yours. You have 20 minutes.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Let me start by saying that I'm really glad to be here. My first visit to Kuwait. Had I been given the chance, I would probably stay more. Honestly, I had a very hard time last night to cut it down to 25 minutes. Now I'm giving me 15 minutes only. Well, 20. 20 would be enough. My paper is kind of long. It's part of a larger project. And it seems that I wouldn't be able to cover all the sides and the parts and the I cover in my paper. From the title, it's very clear that there are two parts for my paper. The first one concerns females, and I have two types of females, Western females and Eastern Westernized females. And the second part concerns violence and the patterns and types of violence in the works I'm studying. I'm studying 4 works. And I told you that this is part of a larger project where I study more works and focus on more other types of violence and more other types of females. Generally speaking, females in the works I am studying are usually shown as victims because generally they study them from a feminist point of view, but I'm studying them from a different perspective, post-colonial. And I see them as colonizers, victimizers, demonizers, manipulators, because they are like this. They represent colonization. The works I'm studying, I have, yes, these are the works I'm focusing on in this paper. موسم الهجرة للشمال, which is translated into English, Season of Migration to the North by Saleh. The second one is Tawfiq al-Hakim's Bird of the East, Osman al-Shab, and I have the Haqi's novel, Hashem, which is the lamp of Hashem, and not a well-known story by Mikhail Nuaima. It's called the Cuckoo Clock, Sa'ad al-Cuckoo. Well, in brief, my paper explores, let me give you I'm going to skip some of the parts now. My paper explores the theme of imperial violence and the works mentioned above. It explores some types of violence as practiced by the West against the East, namely, cultural. I have a long list of patterns and kinds of violence here. psychological and economic. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to give examples from the novels on each one of these, because this would take a long time. And as I said, unlike most of the works done on this theme, that the female as a colonizer, my paper basically sheds light on violence performed by female characters rather than male characters. For example, in most of the Hiroshima, usually they take Mustafa Said. Mustafa Said is, the source of all violence there. And they kind of discard the role of the other Western characters in producing violence. In fact, the violence of Mustafa Said is caused by the violence of those, females. I give a solid theoretical background to my paper, which I cannot be able to cover here. But I play with a lot of new terms, and each term, I'm going to go over these terms, critical terms. I borrow from psychology, I borrow from social fields, some new terms, and each term has a section, and I give example. I demonstrate, these terms from examples from the novels I'm studying. Let me just go over some of the terms. For example, I borrow Etienne's Valibar's term, the structure of violence. I was planning to at least give a definition of each of these terms, but time will not serve me here. But very quickly, a structure of violence, which refers, in fact, to an essential component of a repressive system, manipulating unequal social relations while defending the interests, power positions, and forms of social domination. Another important term is the act of state-sanctioned violence, which I borrow from Alice Compton. Again, it refers to a type of violence, pattern of violence, which exists in most of these literary works I'm studying. Again, I also use each one of these terms has a section, and it is demonstrated, supported with examples from the novels. We have symbolic violence, which is used by Bikri. Next, I have also Benjamin Browser uses a term called multiple logic of violence. Violence not a single act. There are so many other, components and ingredients that make it. I also rely on the theorizing of Franz Fanon, and he is well known. And he takes violence from, or imperialism from, a post-colonial perspective. Edward Said is also used a new term which might be very strange. Not this one. Yeah, probably. I'm using also this term, emotional colonization. Some people refer to it as psychological. Some people say mental. I adopted emotional colonization because it's like colonizing a person emotionally, feeling-wise. But the term that is really strange, which is kind of new, and I got it from social and politics fields, gaslighting. Nina Pozuki defines this term as it is used to describe abusive behavior, specifically when an abuser manipulates information in such a way as to make a victim question his identity or their identity, sanity. Gaslighting intentionally makes someone doubt their memories or perception of reality, and it's used by colonizers. When they colonized, after a while they would question, their memory kind of distorted. This is called gaslighting, a new term. I I also use neo-colonialism or neo-imperialism, which is probably in Arabic can be translated as الاستعمار المستتر, or طيب صالح in his novel موسم الهجرة الشمال uses الاستعمار المستتر. If we go down, I'm going to read this in Arabic. وسمعت منصور يقول لريتشارد: لقد نقلتم إلينا مرض اقتصادكم الرأسمالي، ماذا أعطيتمونا غير حفنة من الشركات الاستعمارية نزفت دماءنا ولا تزال؟ وقال له ريتشارد: كل هذا يدل على أنكم لا تستطيعون الحياة بدوننا، كنتم تشكون من الاستعمار ولما خرجنا خلقتم أسطورة الاستعمار المستتر. That is neo-colonialism or colonization. ويبدو أن وجودنا بشكل واضح أو مستتر ضروري لكم كالماء والهواء. This is one type of violence I study. I cannot comment more. I mean, I have long discussion on this text. Another term which I also borrow from psychology, which is scapegoating. We know what a scapegoat is, and I'm using here because, for example, in Oscar من الشر by Tawfiq al-Hakim, the male protagonist, Mohsen, is used as a toy by the Western female. She breaks, with her boyfriend for 2 weeks, and she wants to fill, this short period with someone else. So she gets involved in a love relationship with Mohsen. He doesn't know that he was being actually scapegoated or manipulated. He was just filling the gap. She wanted actually to tease kind of, jealousy in her boyfriend, French boyfriend, and she uses Mohsen. He was a scapegoated. And we all remember. Do I still have some time? Yes. Okay. Well, I just want to focus on a couple or 3 quotations from some of the novels or works I am studying. Let's look at this quotation from Season of Migration to the North. The novel is translated into English, and I could have wrote the English translation, but I could, comparative literature, working on Arabic literature, I found it, probably better to read these excerpts in Arabic. البواخر مخرت عرض النيل أول مرة تحمل المدافع على الخبز. The colonizer just tried to convince people that, well, these ships are carrying food for sustenance or life, while they were carrying, in fact, weapons. This is kind of lying and manipulating people. Then وسكك الحديد أنشئت أصلا لنقل الجهود. They told people that these trains are for you to make your life simple and you can move freely from one part to another. But in fact, they were brought in for troops, military purposes. And the last one is for me is the most dangerous type of colonization. وأنشأوا المدارس اللي يعلمونها كيف نقول نعم بلغتهم. Schools, educational, violence or imperialism or colonization, and to say yes, enslaving us. And we use their language. We say yes in their language. This is one very dangerous type of colonization. But I'm focusing on the violence, brought by the females. So let me move to this one. I know it's long, and it includes 4 or more different types of violence. He's talking about, Tayyib Saleh is talking about the main female character in the novel, is Jane Morris. And Mustafa Said marries her. It was just like, a game. She told him, well, marry me, and he married her. But she never gave herself to him as a wife. And this scene, she's manipulating him and practicing all forms of violence. You can't imagine. تقدمت نحو مرتعش الأطفال فأشارت إلى زهرية أو زهرية مشهورة المزهرية، that's a vase ثمينة من الموجودة على الرف. قالت تعطيني هذه وتأخذني. مني حياتي after trying for like 3 months, and she's giving him a chance now. لو طلبت مني حياتي في تلك اللحظة ثمنا لقايضتها إياه. أشرت برأسي موافقا. أخذت الزهرية وهشمتها على الأرض وأخذت تلوس الشظايا بقدميها حتى حولتها إلى فتاة. Now I look at this vase as a symbol of Arabic art. Colonizers attacked our art, and this was one of the main targets they tried to attack. فالمزهرية هي رمز للفن العربي. And if you look at all the problem wars, all kinds, art was one of the targets, always one of the targets colonizers targeted. أشارت now the next one أشارت إلى مخطوط عربي نادر على المنطقة. An Arabic rare manuscript. This represents history and culture. And what does she do with it? قالت تعطيني هذا أيضا. أشرت برأسي موافقا. Gives it to him. He kind of sacrifices his culture and history for gamers. What does she do with it? أخذت المخطوط القديم النادر ومزقته وملأت فمها على الورق ومضغتها وبسطتها. This reminds me of him. It's when she actually chewed was it the kidney or the liver of Hamza. كأنها مضغت كمين. ولكنني لا أبالي. أشارت إلى مصلاه. A prayer rug. That's religion. A symbol of religion. And religion is really probably something we cannot easily sacrifice. That's why he says, أشارت إلى مصلاة من حرير أصفهان أهدتني إياها مسز روبنسون عند رحيلي من القاهرة أثمن شيء عندي وأعز هدية على قلبي. قالت تعطيني هذه أيضا ثم تأخذ. ترددت برها. That's religion. It's not easy to sacrifice. ترددت برها. But he sacrifices his religion also. ترددت برهة ولكنني نظرت إليها منحسبة متحفزة أمامي عيناها كالمعاني ببريق الخطر وهززت رأسي موافقا. He sacrifices his. He is completely colonized, brainwashed, manipulated. He actually loses control of his. فأخذت المصلاة ورمتها في نار المدفأة ووقفت تنظر متلذذة إلى النار تلتهمها فانعكست ألسنة النار على وجهها. مشيت إليها وفجأة. So we have now the first one, the vase, which is violence against art. We have the manuscript, which is violence against history and culture. We have the praying rod or the prayer rod, which is actually against religion. And the last part, where is it there? Yes, when she in fact kicks him in a very sensitive area, and this is against his manhood and masculinity. The theme of castration, stripping a man, or masculine men, from their manliness. In one passage we have 4 different types of violence. Let me move to one more one. It's about another character in Season of Migration called Isabella Seymour. He says, وكانت إسابيلا سيمور تستمع إلي بين مصدقة ومكذبة تضحك وتغمض عينيها وتحمر وجنتها وأحيانا تصغي إلي في صمت وفي عينيها عطف مسيحي. I just put it in a different color. عطف مسيحي. Christian symbol. Which means that religion was used to support colonization. The church at that time was supported colonization. We can also see other, for example, look at how Mustafa Said was kind of dehumanized, or I would sometimes say thingified. He becomes a thing. You can use probably reification if you want to borrow from Marxism or commodity fetishism. I like the word thingify, thingification. He's a thing. For example, كيف كانت إيزابيلا سيمور تناجي اغتلني أيها الغول الأفريقي. Mustafa Said is a ghoul. And the ghoul is one of the impossibilities, by the way, in the Arab culture. It does not exist. ضلوا خوفوا فينا بالغول. ببلادنا الغول بيطلع لك, and it's not there. And the other impossibility is the الثانية, the phoenix, which is a mythical bird. This is not our topic. I'm going off track here. But look, اغتلني أيها الغول الأفريقي, then أيها الإله الأسود. Another, character, Sheila Greenwood, says ما أروع لونك الأسود, لون السحر والغموض والأعمال الفاضحة. This is the way they looked at Mustafa Said. They're changing his identity and they want him to apply to this image. They have this image, stored in their minds, and they're expecting to see a Mustafa Said that applies to what they have, previously, installed in their minds. The third one is Hammond, another, Mustafa Said gets involved with in the West, in Britain, in London. كأنها تردد طقوسا انتماء أحب عرقك أريد رائحتك كاملة رائحة الأوراق المتعفنة في غابات أفريقيا غابات متعفنة 2 minutes only. I just talked about our work. The cuckoo
you asked for 25, I'm giving you 23. So.
Well, this is what I'm doing. I'm actually studying all these types of violence, all these types of female characters in all the 4 works, in the Cuckoo Clock, in the Bird of the East, and in the fourth, the Lamb of Compassion. And in each novel, I find representative characters, female characters. I already mentioned probably also in the show when Mohsen was manipulated by this French girl. She just kind of manipulates him. She lives with him for 2 weeks. A very touching and moving love story. And when when she and her boyfriend, go back, reunite, she leaves him and he writes her a letter. And if you really need to read a very touching and moving letter, go to Osfur Nishar, chapter 16, which is, the letter he writes to her. I consider this chapter or this letter one of the probably most touching and moving, the most sensitive.
Written one like that? Have you ever written one like that?
No, I don't know if it was the same experience, but honestly, it's one of the most painful pieces that have been ever written in all literature. Read it. It's very touching. If you're sensitive, you will cry. I wish I could talk more, but it's that time, Thank you so much.
Thank you. And then now I'm going to give the floor to the audience. We have 35 minutes. I'll prioritize the students because they haven't said anything since yesterday. I don't want them to be just present, and then we will give the turn to our guests, our esteemed guests from outside the university, and then our colleagues who are actually the hosts of this event. Okay, this is how it's going to be. We're going to take in a few questions or comments, and then I will give each panelist 5 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes to finalize or to have some final comments. Ahmed.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Saad. My question is to Dr. Yusuf. لما كنت تكلمت في اللغة العربية وتكلمت عن الأمثال، أنا حضرت من البداية، ولكن كان عندي استفسار انك في شريحه في سلايد ذكرت ان الامثال مستوحاه من آية كريمة او من شعر عربي او من كذا. فانا ما ادري يعني شلون احنا نقدر نحط الخط الفاصل عشان نعرف المثل من الحكمة يعني which is considered as a part of the language itself. فيمكن يكون في فرق يعني بين المثل نفسه أو الحكمة. ممكن لأن أنت تكلمت قلت إن في تعريف من تعريف الأمثلة قلت إن لابد أن تكون في جودة للكناية. فما أدري إحنا شلون نقدر نميز ونفصل بين المثل والحكمة خصوصا من ناحية الكناية والإيجاز باللغة.
Good question, thank you. Wisdom, proverb, saying, what have you. Next. Dr. Muhammad, then I'll come to you. We encourage our students actually to ask questions. We urge them.
I have 3 small remarks. I'll start with you, Hussein. Okay, I looked at one. I was attracted by one of your quotations. You know, we are for you like water and air.
Yes.
Do you think if we wake up tomorrow with no Arabs on this planet, would that make a significant difference? Okay, this is my question. Regarding your intervention, Dr. Bكري, okay, we have trouble with the first language rather than with the foreign language. Okay, معلقات, شعر المعلقات. Most people, the average educated Arab, even the highly educated, can hardly handle Ankara's poetry, let alone, translating it. When I look at the translation, I can see that, it's something like turning something into prose rather than into verse. Besides, the themes, the theme itself is not that receptive when it comes to Western culture. They don't praise themselves. Okay, self-praising is completely irrelevant. Have you ever, you've been in the UK, we've been in the States, have you ever met someone who praises himself? No, not yet. Okay, with regard to the intervention on proverbs, okay. Are you expecting and how dare you? These are not proverbs. So you have to be more sensitive to what a proverb means. Thank you very much.
يعطيكم العافية. The whole presentation panel, we really enjoyed your presentations. I have 2 questions, one for Dr. Yusuf and one for Dr. Hussein. So يعطيك العافية Dr. Yusuf, that was enjoyable and certainly insightful. I'm curious to ask, in your work, most of the canons that you cited are lexicographic in nature, and so they are more dictionary-like in their presentations. In literary discussion or a linguistic offering, what kinds of theoretical backgrounds or frameworks do you adapt? Do you use any strategies where, if you have 6 equivalent meanings, which one do you pick to be the one from the target language? Yeah, so that's my question to you, please. And Dr. Hussein, I'm a linguist, I know nothing about literary analysis, but I enjoyed what I heard from you. I'm just curious about the perspective of the writers or the translators. The females that are offered, are they viewed as antagonists or protagonists, usually? Regardless of the violence, is it a source of pride, or is it to be modeled, or is it something to be ashamed and feared? Yeah, thank you.
All right, Mike, there. Then by Mr. Atiyah. Noor is an MA student of translation, followed by the renowned translator Atiyah Bafiri.
It's actually a comment more than a question. When you say that the protagonist
happiness was manipulated and he was brainwashed and he didn't have a choice, and she manipulated him and tricked him into an affair or a relationship for
It's a question to Dr. Qusay, right?
Yeah, for 2 weeks, which basically he agreed on. I see that these are all like very typical justifications of like
but he
fragile.
didn't know about it. He thought that he is in a real love story with her. She didn't know. I mean, she did not tell him anything about her scheme. He was living with her in a very beautiful love story, and all of a sudden she leaves him. He discovers that she's now back to her boyfriend.
Let's let her finish her, and then I'll give you time.
Okay, I'm sorry.
It's just, I just see all of these the answers like he's been brainwashed, manipulated, tricked into this use of discourse of blaming women to everything a man does or anything a man do, basically mistakes a man do. These are very, very typical justifications of like fragile masculinity, and I see that, and I see that you're saying she was with him and then she left him and he didn't know all about that. Well, like seriously, we like women go through that like all the time. Suddenly, it's a crime. If I'm going to bring all the papers that are going to discuss the same topic from the other point of view, seriously, it's 1 to 10, or 1 to 100 even. So I just.
Next. عطية الضفيري is a renowned translator في أدب الرحلات والرحالة الذين أتوا إلى الشرق وخاصة في التراث وأدب القبائل، وترجم الكثير وعرف بروسنغهام، رغم أن خلفيتي ليست بالترجمة، بالبزنس حقيقة والبانكينج. ما أدري ليش انجرد واحد الترجمة يعني. One would think that it's more lucrative to stay in the banking business. عطية.
بالنسبة للدكتور يوسف البدر، في يعني عندي ملاحظة من ناحية كتعريف علمي للهجة الكويتية. يعني هناك غموض يختلف التعريف العلمي، هل هي لهجة كل الكويتيين؟ هل هي لهجة يعني مثل مسلسل درب الزلك؟ هل هي لهجة الإعلام التلفزيوني؟ أم هي لهجة مثلا أهل الجهرة قد تختلف لهجتهم عن لهجة الرميثية وتختلف عن لهجة الفحيحية. فهناك في إشكالية على تعريف اللهجة الكويتية، هل هي لهجة الأكثرية؟ لأنه مثلا علماء اللغة مثل جونستون ولا بروسنغهام وضعوا تعريفات للهجة أهل الخليج اللي هو يعني مواني، ولهجة أهل نجد أو اللهجة النجدية. فهناك في فروقات، فيبدو لي يعني في نوع من الغموض عن تعريف اللهجة الكويتية. شكرا.
السيدة في الخلف وبعدين الدكتور ليلى ثم الدكتور ليلى. We have time.
Thank you all very much for this inspiring talks. I wouldn't have suggested this, but I was forced to because this was triggered by this lady who spoke of these men being victims, these poor souls. This takes us back all the time to women who are victims, in fact, by all forms of violence, going from the slightest to the worst, as having caused their own rape, their own problems because they are not wearing the proper clothes, they are being laughing in public, etc. And they are turned, these victims are often turned into victimizers because they have caused their own troubles. These men who don't even realize this woman doesn't love them, I mean, a man who doesn't realize the woman doesn't love him and would leave him is a fool. And we should present these people as fools, not having been aware that this lady is taking advantage of you. So this is my first point, and I entirely agree with the remarks made earlier. So please.
Would you please introduce yourself?
I'm Muhiba Jamousi. I work at Arab Open University. Thank you.
I know who you are, I just wanted the others to.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And if you allow me this time to respond to what was said about Westerners not praising themselves. First, we praise them enough. They don't need to be praised. We do not stop praising them, believing that they, in this extraordinary, whatever, by the way, self-praising, they do it all the time. Every time an American friend of mine says, you know what is so extraordinary about us Americans, before she finishes I say, nothing. Nothing.
Donald Trump would disagree.
You're not better than anyone else. Trump is the illustration. Thatcher is the illustration. Should I go on with the 100 list of those people who cannot stop praising themselves? We don't even realize they are praising themselves because we praise them so much we think it's not enough. They should also put some more into it. Praise themselves. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We don't have Westerners here. Any advocate of the devil? Anybody? It's not a lady.
Thank you very much. It's a comment again, not a question to Dr. Qusay. First, I'm really proud of Mary Hood. I think our efforts in teaching these post-colonial courses have not gone to waste. And she did sense some kind of misogynistic interpretation in that approach, and I totally agree. Particularly in what relates to موسم الهجرة إلى الشمال, the season of migration to the north, Mustafa Saeed was just acting what in post-colonial literature we know as the empire is writing back. He was just paying back the visit. His country was colonized. He was tamed into believing that the West was superior, this, that, and the other. He was there just to take his to avenge himself, to take his revenge. And what he did is that he deliberately exoticized himself. The way that he decorated his house, the way that he brought the incense from, he wanted to play the Oriental, he wanted to play the stereotype, that which has been formulated in the minds of the Westerners, only to take his revenge, and he did. And it ended up by murder. And I don't like the idea that these females were just manipulating him. I think the manipulation was mutual, reciprocal, and also even the violence is not only one-sided. He was extremely violent, and it was a battle of retaliation. As for the rest of the works, and by the way, I happen to teach all the works that you mentioned in a course called Occidentalism, how the Arabs have viewed the Western. I think, in a way, we are here endorsing the idea of the female other as being manipulative, as being seductive, as being immoral, as being unethical, and it's that innocent, honorable Eastern young man who goes there to be fascinated by what he thinks is a true love, and he is deceived at the end. Yes, innocence, but stupidity and foolishness is the
Lady of point.
They are equivalent.
Thank you, Dr. Dr. is also one of our esteemed guests from Jordan.
From Hashemite University.
From Hashemite University.
We are all from Hashemite University. Yeah. Okay, thank you, Dr. Saad. And also I'd like to thank our three panelists. Actually, the three talks were, thought-provoking talks. Yeah, but my question is, I don't know, as a classroom or we as classroom practitioners, you see, the question is, what pedagogical implications would, for example, focusing or handling, proverbs, you see, especially the question to Dr. Yusuf, taken into consideration, as classroom practitioners, taking this issue of enhancing or promoting, competence, you see, in foreign language teaching. And thank you.
One more question. comment? No more? That's good. I'll give now the floor to our panelists to give their final comments. I'll give each 5 minutes tops, and then we will close the session.
شكرا جزيلا على الأسئلة هذه الثرية. إجابة على سؤالك أول شيء الفرق بين المثل والحكمة. طبعا المثل عادة يخلق أو يبتكر أثناء حادثة أو مناسبة. عادة إذا انتقل إلى أجيال ثانية صار يعني تحت بند المثل. إذا ما انتقل إلى أجيال ثانية يسمونه بالسيمانتكس أو براغماتكس نونس يوز لمرة واحدة وخلاص وليد اللحظة فقط. لكن الحكمة عادة تحمل الحقيقة والصواب، يعني فيها نوعا ما truthfulness فيها، عرفت؟ عادة تكون مستوحاة من أكثر من مصدر. بالنسبة لي دكتور سندس، سؤالك عن أي مثل أختار بالنسبة للأمثال إذا كان عندي أكثر من واحد. طب بالنسبة لي لإطار البحث العام بشكل عام، طبعا هذا مو بحث أكاديمي، هذا عبارة عن صناعة معجم. فما في كأطر أساسية إن نتبعها غير أنها أطر معجمية، يعني lexicographic speaker بالنسبة لي. وبالنسبة للمثل اللي أختاره، بالنسبة لي مثلا عندنا مثل واحد يترجم إلى 6-7 مرات أو 7 أمثال مقابلة. طبعا أرجع للمصادر الأكثر شيوعا، مثل في مصر في أوكسفورد بروفيربس، في كامبريدج بروفيربس، في بروفيربس خاصة في جامعة ييل وهارفارد إلى آخره. ففي هنا عندنا مشكلة dialectology، أي لهجة أختار فيها، أمريكية بريتش إنجلش ولا أمريكان بروفيربس، هنا ترى عندنا مشكلة كبيرة. لكن المعاجم الحديثة اليوم تبين لنا، تحط لنا بين قوسين شيء اسمه ريجستر، بين قوسين تحط لنا أنها US idiom ولا UK idiom ولا Scottish idiom إلى آخره. بالنسبة لي أستاذنا عطية، اللي هو تعريف اللهجة الكويتية، اللهجة الكويتية ما لها تعريف ترى. اللهجة الكويتية طبعا مثل ما عرفت جونستون هي لهجة المنبثقة من اللهجات العنيزية الشمبرية، مثل ما وثقها توماس جونستون سنة 1767 على دراسة مبنية سنة ولما زار الكويت شهر 12 1958 عمل دراسة حول المصطلحات الملاحية واللهجة الكويتية واللهجات الشرقية الجزيرة العربية هذه كلها. فيها خصائص طبعا صوتية، بناء على الخصائص الصوتية بين لهجة ولهجة. طبعا طور أو مثل نقح هذه الأمور والخصائص اللي بروفيسور كلايد هولز في جامعة أكسفورد لما طلع دراسته العظيمة اللي هو عبارة عن 3 مجلدات بتحاول تقريبا 2000-3000 صفحة، يتكون من تصنيف اللهجات الخليجية أو اللهجات الشرقية الجزيرة العربية، فقسم إلى اللهجات اللي قلب الأصوات إلى من كاف إلى تش أو من كاف إلى شين، قلب الأصوات من قاف إلى جيم أو قاف إلى ق مثل ما هي، أو قاف إلى قاف إلى آخره. بالبناء الصرفي هل أنت تقول مثلا صخرة ولا صخرة؟ تقول ولدي ولا ولدي؟ هذا بناء الصرفي. بالبناء مثل المفردات بكابري، هل تقول سرنا ولا رحنا؟ نسير اللهجات الإماراتية يعني نقول رحنا أو مشينا إلى آخره. فهالتقسيمات هذه كلها لأن ما في مصطلح ثابت أو تعريف كامل للهجة الكويتية. بالنسبة لي دكتورنا عن البيداغوجي يعني أو المفهوم التربوي لدراسة الأمثال وتعليمها يعني أثناء الصف. طبعا استخدام الايديومز والامثال يقوي الطالب من ناحيه الستايلستكس، يعني الدراسات اللي هو the more idioms you use the more sophisticated you could be، يعني خصوصا حتى تدخل معاها الفريزيولوجي وتحتها طبعا collocations طبعا تثقف، يعني it's a way to speak natural English، لكن it's not correct English، في فرق بين هذه ولكن يعني كفصيحه اللغه الانجليزيه الفصيحه. Thank you.
Dr. Bukri, final comments? Things that you think that you've missed during your presentation?
I can retrieve what I said, that translating poetry of Al-Jahiliyyah or the pre-Islamic poetry into English is difficult due to the idiosyncrasies or features that such a text type has. And more importantly, the time in which the poems or the suspended poems on the gate, on the door of Kaaba, was too far, it is too distant. And therefore, whatever procedures the translator follows in order to bridge such a social and cultural gap, he would never succeed. The only success that the translator may achieve is the literal translation. It is only the idea, no more than. other implications or connotations or implications of such a type of poetry can never be conveyed in the target language.
أنا عندي سؤال دكتور، يعني هل أخذت هذه الترجمة، وهذا ربما يعني يثير ما أو يربطنا مع أثار الدكتور سعد. The very authenticity of these poems as truly معلقات pre-Islamic poetry. هل هذا يعني بأنه the doctrine of Taha Hussein is null and void and it's all rubbish and nonsense؟ يعني هذا اللي قصدته. طبعا أنت كمترجم don't shoot the messenger، ما لك علاقة. بس أقصد do you take it as face value إنه خلاص this is it، this is معلقات، إنه it wasn't really written at that during the Abbasid era؟ يمكن دكتور سعد بيعلق على الموضوع.
I think classical literature in general is very sophisticated and complicated. If we compare the literary works produced these days, they cannot be as elevated as those written in the pre-Islamic period. Even more than that, many lexical items that were utilized or employed in that type of literature are not alive anymore. Some of them are dead, and if we read, for example, one of the pre-Islamic mu'allaqat for or two native speakers of Arabic, we would not be able to understand more than 30%.
Feel free. Yes. Can you give the mic to Zach, please? I'll give you time.
شكرا دكتور سعد. بالنسبة للمعلقات وأنا لست حجة في هذا.
I can't wait to hear this.
أتكلم إنجليزي ولا عربي؟ المعلقات طبعا جزء من تراث شفوي في نهاية الأمر، نقل نقلا يعني من قبل يعني علماء اللغة في ذلك الوقت الأصمعي وغيره من دونوا هذه المعلقات. حجة أنها فيها كثير من الانتحال مبنية على التشابه الواقع بين بعض هذه النصوص، وأنه كان من السهل على النقلة الذين نقلوا هذه القصائد أن يؤلفوا في وقت كانت القصائد تباع حتى بيعا واللغة تباع. فهي الحجة قامها المستشرقون أولا، مرجليوت طبعا قبل طه حسين، لكن يعتقد أن المترجم ليس معنيا بهذه القضية بالدرجة الأولى، وإن كانت الأمانة العلمية تقتضي ربما الإشارة إلى أن هذه النصوص ليست بالضرورة جاهلية أو ما قبل الإسلام بكامله، وأنا أعتقد أن أجزاء منها ربما ألفت فعلا، يعني وضعت في قصائد يعني في أبيات تتشابه، هي نفس البيت تجد عند طرفة وتجد عند امرئ القيس. فهذا جانب أعتقد مهم عندما نترجم إلى الآخر، يعني أنا نعي هذا القضية.
شكرا لك. الدكتور قصي، أعطيك المجال للتعليقات الأخيرة لو حبيت. misogyny, sexism, or merely don't kill the messenger?
My first point, I am not a misogynist. Not that I was this Jordanian guy coming, with all this hatred towards me. No, I'm married, I love my wife, I am not a misogynist. But this is one way of reading. I mean, probably, I told you this is part of a larger project where probably in other sections I would read the novels from a feminist point of view, where I will sympathize with those women. This is one way of reading it. But I believe that Mustafa Said, when he went to the West, he did not carry with him this huge amount of hatred. This was enhanced by the West. I mean, we have two Mustafa Saids in the novel, or even three. The actual, real Mustafa Said, and we have the Western version of Mustafa Said, which was part of the Western mentality. They were expecting to see a Mustafa Said that applies to what they had in mind. If he does something different, they will be shocked. They were expecting to see and waiting to see the Mustafa Said they had in mind. And he knew this. He tried to be genuine. He tried to be himself. He tried to be the real Mustafa Said, but they did not accept him. They wanted the Mustafa Said that they had in mind. So he said, well, you want to see the Mustafa Saeed you were expecting? I'm going to be the Mustafa Saeed you were expecting. So he faked this to apply or to meet the expectations of those women. And plus, remember, they were expecting to see an Othello, Bishop Lagarde. And he kept saying, I'm not an Othello. They insisted that he is Othello. They wanted to see Othello. But he wasn't. At the end, he says that Othello is a lie. I'm not Othello. You want to see Othello? I'm not Othello. So, they forced him to be violent. They forced him to do what he did. This is how I read it. And, I always tell my students, nothing is wrong in literature as long as you prove it. And I couldn't, cover all the parts of my paper where I give many pieces of evidence to support my ideas. But I promise you, I'm going to have another section, a feminist reading, where I will sympathize with those. Thank you, sir.
And he said, I love my...
Yes, I know.
Isn't this a kind of, colonization? You are being...
We are colonized. Man, yes, we are.
Yes, and with that note, ladies and gentlemen, we have actually just made history because we started on time and we are finishing before the allocated time, and this punctuality is probably unprecedented. I would like to thank our panelists, and I wanted to thank you for your participation, and looking forward to seeing you in the next session. There is a break now, and we'll come back in 15 minutes.
Also, I have forgotten to point out to you right from the very beginning that this paper is still in progress, and conclusions that I have made so far, or that I have arrived at so far, are tentative. Okay, next please. Next. Okay, so let's have a basic idea about what allusion is. Really different scholars have put forward different definitions. From a linguistic point of view, allusion is covered quite extensively, but I'll be selective here. One of the definitions for Shaw in 1976, he refers to, or he considers allusion as a reference for something. This could be explicit or implicit reference for people, for events, for conditions, for certain circumstances, and sometimes this implicit, especially with implicit reference, it might be known to the readers or not known. Next, please. Another one, this is a similar definition, really. There's a great deal in common between this one and the previous one. For Abrams, 1984, also he refers to allusion as a reference, referring to directly or indirectly to people, to persons, to events, etc. Next, please. Also, Libyan, and by the way, I'm adopting Libyan's theoretical model in this paper. That's why I insist on seeing how she looks at allusion. She sees allusion as a variety of uses of preformed linguistic material in its original or modified form, and I'll be talking about modification later on, and of proper nouns to convey often implicit meaning. Really, Libyan is focusing quite a lot on the implicit meaning, and she thinks that in most cases, allusion has to do with the implicit meaning, with the indirect meaning, indirectness in language as such. Also, allusions in general, this is like a recap of what we mean by allusion. Allusion can be viewed as markers or as recognizable or invariantly recognizable markers or elements that may trigger the intertextual feature or connection between the alluded text, the text that contains the allusion, and the source from which this allusion has been borrowed or taken. So, in short, we can say that allusion is a form of intertextuality. It is one of the manifestations of intertextuality. It is really a form of intertextuality. But here, for Libyan in particular, it is like when we allude to the indirect meaning, the implicit meaning. Next, please. So the kind of wordplay, well, I'm trying here to connect this concept wordplay with allusion. The kind of wordplay that I am interested in here is that which includes some modification or a modification on the frames that are used by the language users. And so, what is a frame? A frame, really, when we talk about a frame, we mean any concatenation or combination of words that are more or less traditionally or conventionally fixed in the minds of language users or a group of language users. Okay, so also it can be looked at as the instantiation of the performed linguistic material. Also, another term that is of a direct relevance to remodeling, to modification. I'm still talking about modifying frames. The frames that are used by the language speakers is what has been suggested by Allen and Barrett in 1991, remodeling. They employed this term to talk about the same linguistic phenomenon, which is modifying frames. But they talked about this in the context of euphemism and this euphemism. Such as, for example, this is a quick example, to be or not to be, as a dysphonistic remodeling of to be or not to be. All right? Okay, next please. So, modifying or remodeling involves substitutions. The substitution of lexical items by other lexical items for pragmatic purposes. This can be for offensive, for being allusive, for being satirical, ironic, humorous, etc. And so here, when we talk about remodeling or modifying or remodeling a frame, we are rather talking about this has to do with ways in which lexical choice not only describes events, people, conditions, circumstances, but also it reflects the speaker's evaluative attitude. And evaluative here in the sense that when there's a situation, when there's a text, the speaker evaluates this text. It is like, when we talk about argumentative text, and the writer is there to put forth a counter argument. So before putting forth this counter argument, the writer should read the thesis that he or she is intending to invalidate. So it contains an evaluation process to evaluate, then after that to go ahead with the idea that you have in mind or the point that you are trying to make. This is a very these are this is, by the way, a name for an official website, and it can reflect a pragmatic purpose there. For example, this is how I see this, as maybe a pan-Arab nationalism. Okay, that's why, and as you know, this is a remodeling, or we have a Bilad al-Urbi Awtani. This is the frame that has been remodeled or modified for maybe pan-Arab nationalistic feelings or emotions to be aroused by readers who visit or browse this website. So I remember this is coming from Saudi Arabia. I was there, and that is a drama that was performed in Saudi Arabia by the youth, by some young people, and the pragmatic purpose here is for humor, for comedy, right? This is a remodeling for a comical purpose. The research problem, this paper really is concerned with, as I said, with the translation of allusive wordplay and how whether the expressions that the allusive wordplay expressions selected for this study are translatable or not. And the underlying premise here is that any modification on any given frame can produce a play on words. And this in turn complicates further complicates the translation process. Allusion per se is difficult to be handled translationally. Then if there is a word play, i.e. remodeling a certain frame or modifying a certain frame, this can also add to the difficulty or the complexity of this problem. Next, please. The objectives, two objectives to examine, as I said before, whether these expressions, the allusive word play expressions, are translatable or not. Secondly, it's I'm trying to examine the applicability of Lippian's theoretical model. Lippian proposed a model for handling allusion in translation. It's called Lippian's model for allusion translation. This is it. She basically isolates four basic types of allusion: the proper noun allusion, the key phrase allusion, semi-allusive comparisons, and the stereotyped allusion. And the main focus of this paper is the key phrase allusion, because this kind of allusion has to do with all aspects of culture, and it touches on all spheres of life, all walks of life. Everything, and that's why I focused on this. These, I don't know why I'm having here a different format. It seems that a convergent process took place here. Anyway, these are, I think, the 9 strategies. This is the model she proposed, 9 ones, and I was trying to examine every one of them for every single example that I have selected for this study. The methodology on the whole, I am adopting here a qualitative or a descriptive approach, and this is that I'll be describing the problems and then looking for solutions. Also, let me give you just a basic idea about the data. The data for this study have been selected from the official website for Ahmed Hassan. Ahmed Hassan has an official website that is very well known for all Jordanians. It's called Sawalif, okay? And where you can access all of his writings. He is a prolific writer. He produces, he writes almost on every day, right? And right now, I think he is going digital. He is having a YouTube thing or program that or show that he does, I think, once or twice a week. The data also, I was focusing in my data on titles, mainly for 2 reasons. The first reason has to do with that titles are really abundant with allusive wordplay, with these expressions. They are really rich. The second thing is that a title should be quite suggestive, should be catchy, expressive, and impressive. I mean by this, the title should give you, like, a summary or a recap of the entire idea, of the implicit idea, of the main idea behind the text. I also obtained the data from 1,200 writings that I collected in the period between 2011 to 2015. The configuration here, I mean by the way I will be presenting the examples, the discussion, is that the original one will be, I'll be giving the modified example, then followed by its original. Let's please go, let's move on. This is the first one. The third one of the job is really a remodeling of the parent, one, which is the third one of the Khara. And a literal translation, the first thing that I was doing is to examine, to apply the literal approach, and then to see whether this is okay or not. If it's not okay, I will move to the next strategies and so on and so forth until I find the most suitable translation strategy that can that can maintain the elusive wordplay, or allusion in particular, allusion. Now, in this particular example, Ahmed Hassan talks about the new DNA donation technology, and which allows, of course, a third partner to donate some of his DNA, his or her DNA, to an egg donor. And he is stressing the point that this would really be so problematic to do. This can cause problems, and fights between or among married people can erupt, in the sense that, for example, he is imagining in the future, if a certain family go for this technology, that this is how things will go. For the mom, if the child shows bad manners, she would ascribe this to the husband, to her husband. And if he shows good manners, she would be ascribing this to the DNA donor. On the contrary, the dad, if the child shows good manners, he would be ascribing this to himself as his biological father. Well, if he is showing bad manners, he would be ascribing this to the DNA donor. And so from here, fights will erupt. And so he's saying this is something new or strange to our society. So the best strategy that I found is the second strategy, because this is Lipian's strategy, replacing one part or more of the elusive expression with a suitable IT target language item, and I ended up giving this translation in order to convey the elusive meaning. Okay, 2/3 of a boy are, I am maintaining the elusive part, and DNA donor, this is the suitable target language item. Yes, please. In this example, خيبة في الصيد, this is again a title for an article, خيبة بالشتي. In this article, Ahmed Hassan talks about what happened to Amman at the beginning of the winter of 2000, when Amman was drawn or flooded as a result of blockages in the sewage system. And these blockages occurred because the municipality, Amman municipality, didn't maintain the sewage system. And at the same time, he harshly slams the mayor of Amman for spending a whole month or weeks just before this disaster saying or in press conferences that the budget of the municipality or large amounts of money are spent on maintaining the sewage system and on maybe developing advanced solutions to handle the water drainage or rainwater draining. So, and there's also, he is talking about what happened. He criticizes the government or the municipality for what happened a year before in summer, when it was found that some modern suburbs or neighborhoods in Amman were full of garbage that was there for a long time, it was rotting, and at the same time, he is criticizing so harshly the municipality. So again, we have problems in winter, we have problems in summer. And that's why he was so clever in that the Jordanian is not in the driving seat. They are not taking actions, just words, no actions, okay? So here, in the colloquial Jordanian context, winshakul al amal or winshakul al is usually said when someone is or has been gone for a long time and then he or she turns up, or when someone comes around with some good news to you. Okay, I think since this is the strategy that I found the most suitable for handling this one, which is rephrasing the whole sentence or phrase while keeping the elusive expression as it is. I'm not so much desperate to anything than seeing the moonlight of your winch. And here I'm trying to maintain the allusion as much as I can. I promise to jump right now to the conclusions. Well, as I said, tentative, these conclusions are tentative. Can you please move on? Okay. Well, mainly one of the main conclusions that I have drawn until this point is that allusion or elusive wordplay is quite thorny from a translational point of view. It is very, very difficult to be handled translationally. Secondly, remodeling or modifying any given verb is shown to result in a play on words that is key to intensify and broaden the meaning or to complicate the meaning. We're talking here about semantic complexity, which leads up to translation complexity as well. And thirdly, Hassan's sarcastic humorous writing style has been found to further complicate the translation process, because also in many cases he was also trying to be humorous, right? Remodeling, allusion, remodeling plus humor. So that these three aspects were complicating the entire job or complicating the job of the translator. I have to stop right here. Thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you to Dr. Alaء and الخرابشة for this interesting presentation. Will you take questions, Doctor? Okay, so the floor is for the audience for 10 minutes to offer comments or questions to our speaker. Yes, I will start with the students. Gracefully, let's allow them a chance. Let's see. Any questions from the students or our visitors? So on to you, Doctor. Tafadhal.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Sanders, and thank you, Dr. Alaء. It's been a very interesting presentation and a good topic, actually. Yeah, I've got two short questions. Could this, allusion, could it be viewed as a rhetorical device? This is one question. The second, again, could it be viewed as a persuasive strategy? And the third one, what relevance or what relationship does this have to do with puns in terms of their function? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Majid, for these interesting questions. Well, in fact, yes, allusion can be viewed or envisaged as a rhetorical device if you take this within the context of euphemism, diseuphemism, right? This can be, allusion here can be a rhetorical device, because here you either beautify or uglify, right? The writing. You're all writing, or what you are writing, what you are expressing here. So yeah, it can be considered a rhetorical device. And of course, there is a certain effect. And as far as the part of your question, as I said, I mentioned earlier that allusion is employed for pragmatic purposes. For being ironic, satirical, comical. So here in this way you are really performing a certain pragmatic act. This is a pragmatic act. So you can perform certain pragmatic acts through allusion.
And what maxim, would it flirt? Axis or grass?
No.
Just the flower.
I think you can flout the maxim of manner and
flouting or deviating or breaking.
No, flouting. Stick with it.
Well, relevance is maybe relevance, because sometimes when you remodel a certain frame, you are really departing to another idea that is completely different from the parent, what the parent frame is having, is containing, semantically speaking, I mean, yeah.
Any other questions? Or comments? If I may, I have a question for my colleague, Dr. Alaء. Will you take my question? Yes. Indeed, I agree with you. This is a complicated task that you will be undertaking should you choose to accept it, Mission Impossible style. Yeah. how much cultural sensitivity or feasibility in the mind of the target reader should you consider? Because there may be an element of literary sophistication that is required. Yeah, so it's a kind of a dance to find the middle ground between, for example, something like Fairuz's حبيتك بالصيف حبيتك بالشتي, and other a little bit pop culture, a little bit literary. What's the deal here?
I think the answer is in your stomach. You have passion on the answer, because in fact Ahmed Hassan was drawing on things that are very, very common to the Jordanian reader, to the layman, or to the average reader, and when he was also employing some international symbols or icons or references, alluding directly or indirectly to something that is regional or international, he was really focusing on the very, very well-known things, cultural references that are in common.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I missed the talk.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. They fall back on
You said it.
basically, when it comes to allusions like that, they fall back on popular as well as political culture. I remember, I did a paper a long time ago, and I gave you a copy of it.
Yeah, that's right.
Which more or less dwells on what your theme.
That's right.
Right, and I still remember, when it comes to your question about what maxim is being allowed. Okay, I still remember one of the remodelings that Ma'ilak, at the time when when Hezbollah was bombarding Haifa, or pretending to be doing so, and the headline in one of the Kuwaiti newspapers was in a commentary, Ma'ilak illa Haifa. Ma'ilak illa Haifa. Okay, this is starting of the maxim of manner, right? So you, by shocking the expectations of the receiver, you shock his expectations, but you do this for a communicative purpose. لشيء في نفسه يعقوب. Thank you very much.
And this is what I.
Puns? Puns? All right. This is wordplay, right? Because you have,
This is the wordplay.
But pun is another type of wordplay.
Yeah, pun. But this is, when it comes to remodelings or such allusions, they have parent expressions.
Exactly, yeah.
They have parent expressions. يعني ما إلك إلا حيفا. إجت منها ما إلك إلا حيفا. ما إجت من فراغ.
Thank you, Dr. Kamal. Other questions or comments? Depends on who you ask.
It all depends, all depends.
So we say thank you to Dr. Aladdin and the audience. Our next speaker taking the stage is my kind colleague, Dr. Naeem Al-Ghamdi from the University of Imam Abdurrahman bin Faisal in Saudi Arabia. She is going to talk about the very complicated task of audio-visual translation into Arabic, the ideological dimension. She is interested, in case you want to ask later, any questions related to applied linguistics, especially translation, literary translation studies, and socio-linguistics. So the floor is yours, Dr. Naeem Al-Ghamdi.
To be part of this interesting conference. Actually, I was supposed to deliver a paper instead of Dr. Hassan Ghazala, who was supposed to present the paper in this conference, but due to some visa problems, he gave me the chance to present the paper, but actually his paper wasn't in a PTT form, so I shifted a day or two to a paper that I have presented earlier in Ancient University of Al-Azhar last summer, and I will see how I can relate it to the theme of the conference, which is translation. Actually, there is a translation. There is a translation part in this paper, which I will concentrate on. The theme is a pragmatic representation of animal in al-Bahr works and eco-linguistic analysis. And as Farali earlier has a paper in relation to Jordanian proverbs, I will do the same, but mine is different in a way that it provides an eco-linguistic reading. So let's see how far this new paradigm of linguistic, which is eco-linguistic, can be pertaining to an local speech community in al-Baha, which is an area in the southern west of Saudi Arabia. This is the place where I live. And how it relates to the proverbial scene. Recent study reconstruct a synchronic eco-linguistic analysis of al-Baha and verbs to deduce the representation of human-animal relationship at the current time. The paper undertakes an overview of al-Baha animal proverbs as metaphorical, pragmatic acts. This is how I constructed the paper, that proverbs has to be perceived as metaphorical, pragmatic acts that cannot be understood independent of the speech community area, ecological system, wordings, and cultural contextualizations. The data tested four classifications of al-Baha, animal proverbs and proverb-like expressions into general truth, cultural, social, and apothegm groups. Apothegm means some sort of proverbial saying which narrates an incident. It's about an event. Usually when we say kama, and then we tell something. Kama, this is called apothegm. Because we have lots of confusion regarding what a proverb is, in the first place. So a proverb or an idiomatic, sometimes expressions or proverb-like expressions can be classified into these four groups as the study concluded. From the methodological point of view, the study moves along two lines of analysis, linguistic analysis of verbs, and I have adopted the relevance theory, which originally originates in cognition, not linguistically or theoretical framework that fits the paradigm, but let's see how it will succeedingly relate to two sort of meanings, which is the primary meaning and the secondary meaning, or what is said, which is different from what is meant. The whole idea is about how the proverb articulates or communicates something and means something else, but from an eco-linguistic perspective. This is the main idea. Sometimes we say something and we mean something else, but the study provides an eco-linguistic reading of such metaphorical expressions. As for the socio-linguistic dimension, the study adopts holidays, functional grammar or systemic functional grammar, which relates the society in the proverbs to the speech community. We could have an overview that ecology is the main, in the outer space, language, in eco-linguistics, in al-Baha, fauna, or animal proverbs. What is ecology and how it's different from environmentalism, as emphasized by our religion, which is completely different. So ecology or eco-linguistics is different from environmentalism, which is which is motivated in our religion. والدليل كثير من الأدلة توحي بذلك. لو كان في أحدكم فسيلة فليغرسها ومن ثم يستسلم لقدر الله. This is completely different. This is environmentalism, which is emphasized in our religion, but the studies and eco-linguistic. It has to provide an eco-linguistic reading through wordings, through expressions, through certain economy with reference to animals in the context of al-Baha. Like the term ecology, environment has different conceptualization of different conceptual meanings, and since the study adopts an eco-linguistic analysis or approach of the time, the physical or the abstract means all the physical, natural wordings, living and non-living items or elements that surround the animal. The study wants to see the relationship between the speech community and how they articulate the the proverb in animal wordings. Traditional ecolinguistic studies mainly focus on language shift and endangerment, where it can explore patterns of language that influences how people both think about and treat the word. And this is what we call anthropocentric. We perceive things through man. It's just one side vision. It's an anthropocentric paradigm or approach. We perceive the world through our eyes. And different contexts will contribute different contextualizations and different ecolinguistic readings of different contexts. But since the 1990s, ecolinguistics come to compromise research into how discourse can denote to the relation between human beings and the environment. And this flourishes especially in Africa, where they communicate too much with the oral tradition. They communicate through proverbs. Nigerian people or the Yoruba proverbs, they usually communicate on daily basis with reference to proverbs. They usually end their conversation with quoting certain proverbs or proverb-like expressions. So most of the oral tradition said in relation to the eco-linguistic dimension is, as a study stated, is reference to the Nigerian or the African eco-proverbs. The operating definitions that the study has adopted has to do with multi-layers definitions, which is proverbs and proverbs as metaphorical expressions, and proverbs from a pragmatic point of view in relation to the speech community and Baha speech community. The questions and objectives of the study is to what extent is the Baha ecosystem represented in animal proverbs, and what do animal proverbs reveal about a Baha speech community. And the objective is to celebrate or to recall being from Al-Baha. I have to do something to my place. This is the second paper that I have articulated the speech community of Al-Baha oral culture, oral tradition. The first paper is a religious-based study of Al-Baha proverbs, where I have related most of their proverbs to a religious dimension. I have referred their proverbs either to Quranic verses or a hadith from Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. This is the second one, which celebrates the oral tradition, how Al-Baha speech community communicates their abstract environment, specifically in reference to animal. Okay, animal was there in almost all their proverbs, and we will see just few references how Al-Baha speech community managed to do so. Okay, to provide a pragmatic linguistic explanation of these animal proverbs, the cultural context of Al-Baha is very important to present here, since Al-Baha is one of the main tribes, main provinces in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. You have to see what the sort of language or dialect they articulate. They belong to what is called بلاد غامد وزهران أو لهجة بلاد غامد وزهران, as noted by Al-Nadawi and as noted by the historians in the area. Geographically speaking, the district of Eastern Saudi Arabia, known as Bilad Ghamd wa Zahran, located in the high lands of the southern Hijazi, reaching from Al-Baha to Aqaif. The area is determined by a chain of mountains known as As-Sarawat. The regions of Ghamd wa Zahran lie in a situation of relative isolation, and we will see how this has an impact on certain categorizations of animals, especially wild animals. This has been stated by Nadawi. The region is situated in area characterized by natural tree cover and agriculture, plateaus, forests, and rainy season. From a historical point of view, the linguistic development of the vernacular forms of Arabic is controversial. It is claimed by some Arab authors that the dialect of Bilad Ghamd wa Zahran, known as Al-Baha province of Saudi Arabia, is the nearest to classical Arabic. That's why I have seen in the data lots of conventional wordings and expressions that are archaic or that needs reference to additionally to obtain their meaning. Al-Baha, as noted by Nadawi, that Lahjat Bilad Ghamd wa Zahran is the most closest to the classical language in the study, which was conducted in 1968, page. The framework is superb reference to some sort of mapping when we read a metaphor or when we say a a proverb, we usually articulate two dimensions. We do some sort of calculations or mapping from the source to the target, from the primary meaning to the secondary meaning, from what is said to what is meant. This is what Lakoff and Johnson define as understanding and experiencing one kind of experience or semantic content in terms of another, to make it more easier, implicit and explicit meaning as stated in the theory, or explicator and implicator. The explicator is the literal meaning that appears to the surface. If you see this mountain, you could see that explication of what appears to the audience or the reader, but the proverb, when it is said, and especially with reference to animals, it has some sort of deeper connotations or implications. The methodology of the data is data-driven. I have relied most of the part on Ali As-Saluk, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, who combined all the proverbs of Al-Baha in a book, سماه كتاب الأمثال الشعبية في منطقة الباحة. He was a local citizen and he was in constant contact with the speech community there, so he arranged all the proverbs alphabetically and he relates each and every proverb with its context of its use. The data attested mainly what is called domesticated animals, and the wild animals were detached from the Baha scene, and this could relate to the nature of life. People or the farmers in Baha, they relate to the physical agriculture situation, and that's why they keep the wild wolves or sapiens apart from their flock in order to survive. The proverb related to the wild animals are rare, also snakes or hyena. The scarcity fits the rural habitat of Al-Baha, where farmers are keen of protecting their cattle from any sort of threat. Physical detachment is equal in the rarity of the wild animals in the Al-Baha proverbial scene. Let's start with the first. I try to present it in some sort of figure. And the theory is on the left side that we rely on some sort of mapping or some sort of optimization of relevance, or as the theory said, we do some sort of inferences, okay, some sort of inferring the meaning from the situation. We have the proverb, العاجلة تأكل الحجلة. Early primary seeds are eaten by fast birds. Or we see or relate two dimensions, the human and the animal. The human is the flora haste, and the animal is the animal tries to benefit from the situation. So it could be equal something like one's misery is another's benefit. This is the equivalent, or we could say the same semantic sense that gives the meaning al-ajila. Al-ajila is the early priming seeds of some sort of plant that is eaten by one of the bird components in Al-Baha, which is called al-hajala. Al-hajala is very well known in Al-Baha as the region. To close the loop, you see the loop, we optimize relevance. This is where the theory lies, how we close the chain between the surface meaning and the target meaning, or the explication, and the implication is through optimizing relevance. So originally the theory works in here. We try to do some sort of mapping in the dimension of the human-animal relationship. The structure of the verb is some sort of reason-result. You could see that the structure of the proverb relies on some sort of social experience of reason-result. The proverb has the English equivalent: one group's misery is another's group benefit. And the primary literal meaning is early primary seeds are eaten by birds. The proverb indicators assert that haste is a waste for the flora and gain for the bird. The proverb records that Baha inhabitants' clear observation of the ecological fact that the flora that primes before its time is eaten. How could they relate such a proverb to their direct immediate situation? Through their observation of the attitude or the attributes or the behavior of al-hajala. Al-hajala هي التي تلتقط early primary seeds. This is the eco-linguistic dimension of reading provided in this proverb.
الحجلة طير لا يوجد إلا في الباحة. يعني الحجلة نوع من الطيور. It's very well known by its bird, but it's called حجلة. It's not a bird. It's just one. Yeah, partridge. Yes, I have provided that. It's a partridge. You see, the bird partridge is popular in the Baha environment for its fast, flying leap, and strong vision. The third one is he who strikes the truck will shake the camel, which renders the meaning that beating one to frighten the other. So we have this source meaning, and I have tried to relate as far as I could to the equivalent translation or the semantic component. It's not equivalent, a semantic component that beating one to frighten the other, and we see that the human and the animal dimension is أضرب العيبة. العيبة, what's meant by عيبة, is referring to a handmade leather truck placed over a camel's hump. And the second one, أشبه وأقرب ما يكون المثل إياك أعني وأسمعي يا جارة. The proverb relies on expressing the immediate reference to الجمل أو اهتزاز الجمل. The reference to the camel relates to the dignified image or representation of الجمل in the context of al-Baha. The sheep won't perch nor the wolf be deprived, as you said yesterday, but your I think the Jordanian proverbs relates to the camel, not the sheep. The sheep won't perch nor the wolf be deprived. أقرب منها, no harm, no foul. Could you see the dimension between the surface and the target meaning? Okay. The thematic, the indirect semantic sense relies on contextualizations of a socially observable condition of the ecosystem and calls for independence between species and neutrality of perspective. The proverb call for some sort of sustainability between animals. لا تبنى الغنم ولا يحرم الدين. فهذه قراءة إيش؟ قراءة equal linguistic explanation that the proverb calls for, the speech community call for some sort of interdependence or for maintaining balance in the environment between the wild and the domestic. Okay, a bite of hunger is better than 100 sheep camel. دائما في الأمثال صفة الجمل dignified and is he. بينما الناقة okay عرضة for perishing, عرضة for carrying. Okay, but there is a pejorative connotations to the sheep camel. لقمة على فاقة خير من 100 ناقة. Hunger is the best source. This is what I could figure equivalent to the translation of the proverb. The verb echoes some sort of wordings like لقمة or mouthful, which strongly denotes to a basic need at a time of scarcity. فاقة, this lexical wording intensifies the sense of utter poverty and asserts a factual experience that surviving overrides the value of 100 sheep camels. Camels at that time were economically, socially of great value in all the Arabic literature. The context of use is hafaluf is better than no bread. الجمال تقاد بالخطم والرجال باللقم is equivalent to something the way to a man's heart is through his stomach. Camels are driven by their halters, men by their horses. Halters and horses and some sort of connotations with reference to some items or constituents of the immediate environment of al-Baha. الجمال تقاد بالخطم. الخطم, you know what خطم means. The halka. خطم is some sort of belt which ties the mouth of the camel to its neck. So we have some constituents, some expressions, some wordings which relates to the specific or what we call it metonymy relationship, a reference of a part to the whole. So even the wordings, the archaic expressions are socially specific and eco-linguistically enrolled. Like a sheep locust that cannot see further than its ear. This is very, this proverb I find it very interesting because كما جرادة ما تلمح إلا عند ابنها, and I consulted so many local speech community of al-Baha, and they said كما جرادة ما تلمح. What does that mean? That a locust that cannot see further than its ear. What is it that the speech community in al-Baha concentrated or echoed in this proverb? he who is short-sighted and thoughtfulness. Okay, the reference in this proverb is to the biological characteristics of the compound eye of الجرادة. يعني واضح in speech community concentrated on not the eyes which are used for vision. They concentrated on the biological appearance of the locust. طيب لما بحثت في تركيب physical appearance or biological characteristics or features of the eye of the locust اكتشفت البعد هذا البعد المكاني البعد الزماني أو reference to certain images or features related to locust. Compound eyes have poor image resolution. A locust possesses a huge view angle and relies on its nerve system to see. So the people at Al-Baha, they perceive that the locust cannot see further than its ear because they concentrated on the behavior of the locust. When we see locust, we always have the image that they don't see. They have some sort of poor image. الحقيقي في الأمر من خلال التحليل للفيجن of the locust في علم البيولوجي اكتشفوا أنها تمتلك نظرة أو تركيز جدا عالي يفوق قدرة العين. And they articulate through some sort of nerve system. It's through light. That's why locusts are driven by temperature and light. لما يأتي موسم عندنا في مواسم معينة في فصل الشتاء ينقادون إلى النور ويبتعدون عن الضوء. الليل ينزلون. Sorry, kindly conclude. Okay. الباحة animal ecosystem naming في الداتا اللي جمعتها almost 30 proverbs or almost 30 metonymy 16. عندنا some sort of parallel alliterations صراحة وبركة وقام وينساق وينقاد في alliterations في assonance. Human animal lexical involvement in الباحة seen as mostly of hybrids. Representation of الباحة animal scenes bull, a sheep, camel, donkey, cow, insects, wild animals. أنا قلت فقط الhyenas and snakes. Prototypical negative connotations of animals are to the sheep, camel, sheep, and man is always dignified. Proportion of human-animal lexical engagements in al-Baha is mainly through the anthropological centric vision of man, not the animal. The data concluded that al-Baha proverbial scene is very specific, socially specific to the speech community. It documents graphic and dynamic statements and expresses social cultural experiences of the people through certain exploitations of expressions or processes. And the upper times like kama himar or medariya, like donkeys winnowing or العجلة تأكل الحاجلة. There is a process, there is some sort of depicting dynamic processes or social activities like the activity of winnowing. You know winnowing اللي عملية ذروة العشب من particles. So this image is also recorded and it records some sort of social activities related to animals. Animal proverbs or proverb-like expressions can be categorized into 4 main types. Al-Baha proverbs records 21% of animal naming, metonymy 20. Discrimination of domestic animals in the Al-Baha scene. There seems to exist some sort of proportional correlation between proper animal naming and animal metonymy. Camel-related metonymy is highly followed in sheep, bull, then birds. This is attributed to the diversity of Al-Baha habitat where Tahama and nomadic dwellers rely significantly on camel being useful in transportation and economically important. And this is reported because the speech community in Baha is not usually of Al-Baha citizens. It also have some Tahama dwellers. They are Bedouins or nomadic tribes. So that's why we could see some sort of diversity in the data. There are processes recorded in the data like رحلة كذابة يحمي الجراد عملية الإحماء الإحماء يحمي الجراد means protecting the crops from the invasion of the locust through some sort of social activity dominated by man himself. يسوق من سواقة الماء وليس the expression has to do with driving. مدرية which is winnowing. So there are actions and there are activities and processes recorded in the data that can render unequal linguistic reading. Further studies in the field could be related to contrastive eco-friendly discourse in Saudi Arabia in the present time or in the past, and eco-green discourse could be recorded. This is what I have seen from the data, that someone can do some sort of critical or eco-linguistic study with relation to the green discourse or plantations of the Baha. Animal stereotyping was recorded in the data. Someone else can elaborate more on this. Eco-linguistic ancestral Baha landscape from a semiotic point of view could also be done in relation also to literature or in ads, commercial ads. This will be perfect. Semiotic analysis of the Baha, semiotic analysis of the locus, the words, and the Baha. Thank you for listening.
That's very
Thank you, Dr. Naima, for what I can attest is probably the first ecological research presented at Kuwait University. So on to the questions and comments now. We actually only have 7 minutes or so left for your questions. I open the floor to you. Yes, please.
Thank you, Dr. for your presentation. I just have one question regarding the proverbs, and especially when I'm talking about proverbs. Are cultures in general parallel to each other? Because when we translate proverbs, especially proverbs, we're trying to find equivalent in the target language. And especially are talking specifically about one area in Saudi Arabia, right? And all the examples that are provided in English, they are kind of equivalent in the English. They can relate to it, right? So my question is, are cultures parallel to each other?
Cultures are different. This is the issue that different, as I said from the beginning, I have dealt with proverbs or proverbial expressions from a specific point of view related to the local speech community. Different cultures have different perceptions of the universe. And different universes or ecosystems will render different language. This is a controversial issue. Is it language that determines thought, or is it thought that or language that determines thought? So the issue is controversial. Someone else can deal with it from the speech community local language. So different ecosystems will render different readings. Different cultures will have different.
My lecturer before. Before I start, I would like to take you to 2011. During the Arab Spring, I remember I was fixated on the TV because I was watching different channels. Al Jazeera says something, and then Al Arabiya says another thing, and then we have CNN and BBC, totally different world. I walked into the living room and I'm talking to my mom and my dad. My mom is arguing with my dad and she says, "What are you talking about? There is no such thing about the Arab Spring. It doesn't exist." And my dad is like, "Can't you see the massacres and the atrocities in Libya, Syria?" And my mom was like, "This is Al Jazeera feeding you lies." And then I was like, what's going on? Like, they live in the same house, watching the same TV, and they're thinking two different things. And then I realized that it's all about the media and what you believe and what the media wants you to believe and what they're trying to impose on you or shape your opinion. So before I talk about my research, before I impart on that and get you all bored, sorry, but I want to introduce the notion of ideology and what exactly does it mean. Ages ago, back in 1796, a French thinker called Tracy introduced ideology as a science of ideas. And then in the recent years, scholars like Van Dyck, 1995, and Fairclough introduced it as a shared system of beliefs, as in what believe in. And it is reflected in our language, in our daily discourse, what we say to people. It's all based on our ideology and what we believe in. And because it's linked to language and discourse, it has to be linked to translation. And because translation is my area, I wanted to see how is translation affected by ideology, by the translator's ideology? Does it really impact them? And does the outlet, like agencies or media outlet, does it really affect the translators and the outcome of the translation? So according to Fawcett, it has been the same process since old age. Ideology has always affected or imposed by translators on their productions, which is when we reproduce translation, we're affecting the whole process by the choices of words that we choose. A very, very simple example is when you come to the Arab region and you have a text in English and it says Israelis, we will directly translate it to Kayan Sahuni or Sahayna. It's a given. We rarely find someone who would say Israelis or Israeliyin. It's not because we have a certain ideology about it, but this is our culture, this is how we were brought up, and that's our ideology. According to Schaffner, before I move on, Schaffner is a translation scholar, and she's really interested in ideology and its effect on political sphere, and especially in translation. And she believes that even the text we choose to translate, like when we see the news and then we choose specific text to translate, is by itself an ideological aspect or an ideological choice. For that reason, I wanted to see to what extent does the really ideology affect the choices that we make as translator, and especially on the news, because the news is right there, and then we take it and we reshape it and send it to viewers differently. So the first, I have two speeches from the Arab Spring. The first one is the very known controversial character, Muammar al-Gaddafi. His first speech on the 22nd of February. It's a very, very linguistically rich speech. And then we have Hosni Mubarak on the 10th of February. I'm sorry, I don't mean any insult, but a very dull speech. And then my data, the translation, is basically from the Mail, the Daily Mail, and then the translation as an article, and then The Guardian. Why I chose those two different newspapers, it's basically for their opposing ideologies. This is a far right and this is a far left newspapers. I wanted to see how did that affect the translation process and whether it really did affect the ideology or the common narrative during the Arab Spring of throwing down the two presidents. I propose a model of analyzing the translation, basically analyzing the source text and then analyzing the translation. The model consists of two stages. The first stage is about analyzing the source text to understand the ideology of the presidents and their choices, using critical discourse analysis, which is Fairclough, to analyze the speech, analyze the words they chose, the terminologies they chose, and how it's reflected on their ideology. And then multimodality, which is a new thing, but really important thing for translators. Because when you analyze the attire they wore, the settings they were in, then you realize why they are doing it. Why did he appear in that attire? We will talk about it in a minute. And then we go on to analyzing the target text. What's with the target text? We analyze the target text using the critical discourse analysis. How did the translator use those words to translate it? Or they didn't even use it. They didn't even, totally disregard it. And then multimodality again, as well as the narrative. The importance of analyzing the narrative is because narrative and ideologies are intertwined. Why? Because when you see the way narrative is, there is a common narrative, a known narrative about certain things, and then that narrative is so known that it eventually affects your ideologies and belief. And that's how it is in the political sphere. So the first example I have from al-Gaddafi and Hosni Mubarak's speech, which is in the Arab language, in Arabic, is the use of pronoun I, whether أنا or Muammar al-Gaddafi or Hosni Mubarak. It was used in the speech for 105 times. If you are trying to appeal for someone, trying to beg them to forgive you, let's say, you won't keep saying I. And that's what the president did. For Muammar al-Gaddafi, I can actually look it over because it's like 1 hour and a half speech, but 105 times. So, all right, maybe that's okay. But Hosni Mubarak, it's like 20 minutes speech, and it's 84 times. It's like the whole speech is about myself, Hosni Mubarak. And this is one of the reasons why everyone in the Arab region couldn't really forgive the presidents, because it's like, you're talking to us, but you're still talking about yourself. The second thing is a very thing that Arabs are fond of, which is the conspiracy theory. America are going to come here, they're going to get us. So that's the same ideology that both presidents share. Muammar al-Gaddafi kept saying, الأربيجية عالم في مدينة بنغازي خشوها الأمريكان. As in the Americans sneaked it in. And then انتوا تبوا أمريكا تجيكم تحتلكموا? As in the United States are going to come here and they're going to interfere and they're going to take you over, just like Iraq. Which is basically sharing the ideology with people of fear of being, invaded by foreigners. And then we have Hosni Mubarak, exactly the same thing, but not really, with details. As in, I'm not going to listen to foreign dictations. لن أقبل أبداً أن أستمع لإملاءات أجنبية تأتي من الخارج. Or لم أخضع يوماً لضغوط أجنبية وإملاءات. Which is exactly the same thing, but Hosni Mubarak was polite enough not to actually say it. And here comes the importance of multimodality. When I told you before that multimodality can also share an ideological belief or can reflect on what I believe in, is basically here in this picture, everyone mocked al-Gaddafi because he looked bizarre. He does not look bizarre to Libyans because this attire is a very old, traditional Libyan attire. And he was wearing that to appeal for the Libyan tribes, which comes from, I am Libyan, I am one of you, how can you do this to me? And this is why he wore this. How did it explain in foreign medias like BBC and other ones? It was always called a bizarre attire, his bizarre performance. And also, this palace is a very famous to Libyans. It's a symbol of resistance because it was bombed by the United States Air Forces back in 1988. And to Libyans, this is a symbol of resistance. So al-Gaddafi standing here is no random. He's not being random. He's doing this on purpose. And everyone is saying, why is he standing in that mess? What is he trying to do? He's being really smart. He's sending a message. To me, it's smart. I know he's a horrible guy, but it's still smart. I mean, you standing there, sending a message of resistance and showing people that you bombed us, but I'm still here. I'm not moving. I'm not going anywhere. Hosni Mubarak wore exactly the same outfit, the same setting in his 3 speeches. And that's why he was labeled by all Egyptians as very dull, repetitive. Why are you repeating yourself? I already understood what you said, and I'm not interested. And that is for the source text. When we come to the target text, it's amazing how many aspects, whether linguistics or extra-linguistics aspect, was misled or disregarded. Because there was a common narrative back then that the importance of all news is basically that we need to throw down those presidents. I don't care about anything else. And we need to support the protesters, basically. So when we look at the Daily Mail, there were words, and like the experts they translated from the speech were always about al-Gaddafi saying something like, let's attack, or words like monstrous, dictator, and I will fight, the bloodshed. All of those words are giving like bad and violent connotations. And when it comes to Mubarak by The Guardian, it's always the defiant. And it's very interesting here. I found one of the phrases that says, he would not listen to foreign pressure, notably from the US. He did not say anything about the US. Where did you get it from? And that was really puzzling to me because I could not get it. I tried to email them and see the person who translated the text, but unfortunately I didn't have a response. About multimodality, like I said, the importance of translating multimodality is the importance of translating modes. Like if his attire was mentioned, or if we change the modes that was in the original picture, and then we look at the article, the first thing we see is the title and the images that we have. Why is it important to have those images? What does it affect? How does it shape the audience views of the article, let's say? The Daily Mail had a picture of a Gaddafi, a very violent one, as if he is crazy, and he is. And the other picture is of a destruction and the massacres in Libya. All the other pictures are exactly the same. It's like there is something going on in Libya and we need to intervene, and it's horrible. The Guardian, when it comes to Hosni Mubarak, they chose to totally ignore Hosni Mubarak. Although this article is about Hosni Mubarak's speech, the only picture was this picture. Egypt refuses to listen to Hosni Mubarak, which is very blunt, and it says, it sends a message. Why is it important for me to actually talk about narrativity within all those aspects? I think it's important because when Muna Baker says that the narrative is actually something that is given, and it's very common and dominant, that we need to understand how does it affect the translation process. Here, when I think I need to take down al-Gaddafi, I'm not going to say al-Gaddafi wore nice outfits to appeal to Libyans. Of course I'm not going to mention that. I'm going to not randomly, I'm going to just, in particular, select certain texts that I feel will impose my idea or my ideology and affect the audience with that. If you want to see the way both presidents were portrayed by The Guardian and by the Daily Mail, the first image or the first narrative that al-Gaddafi is a crazy guy. He was called the Mad Dog so many times, and that was the same image portrayed by everyone, almost all the newspapers. So when you look at the Daily Mail, they chose, al-Gaddafi in his speech said a lot of things about drug dealers, and the youth are drug addicts and stuff like that. And he was appealing to the people to actually شدوهم سلموهم عشان نعالجوهم, which he wanted to do. I'm not sure if he wanted to do that or not. But the interesting thing is, the way it was translated, it was always translated to attack them. How can you catch someone and then attack them? How can you, want to cure someone but still attack them? So I think that's a wrong translation. It's mainly there to emphasize an idea, impose an idea of his violence. And I think there was, this is a British newspaper, there was something going on in the UK about the NATO intervention in Libya. A lot of people were refusing it because they thought this is another land sovereignty, we can't just go in there and take over. So they needed to make the people believe that there are massacres and atrocities going on in Libya, we have to intervene. So when they use words like that, it actually makes people believe that, yeah, we have to intervene. Look at what he's doing. Asmاء? Yes, here. Sorry. Oh, I'm looking over there. Sorry. All right. I'm almost done, anyways. When it comes to Mubarak, he was always regarded as the stubborn old man because in the article, the Guardian article, he was called defiant 8 times. There is really nothing as important in that article as the constant repetitive things about Mubarak being defiant and stubborn and not listening to anyone. So my conclusion is basically that we have 2 opposing ideologies, 2 different newspapers. They both had the same ideology during the Arab Spring, because they all believed that we need to support the uprising, we need to take down those two presidents, and that's how we need to shape our news, how we need to re-narrate it to the audience to make them even believe or impose our ideologies on them. I really believe that ideology cannot be extracted from a text, and it's intertwined with translation and discourse, because even while we speak, we can say things that really reflects our own beliefs and ideology. Thank you very much. Thank you.
On to the questions and comments. The floor is yours, audience members. So I'll start with Dr. Saeed.
Mike.
Mike, please.
Mike. No.
So, thank you very much indeed. The issue of ideology here and narratology, how much is it different from ideology, or are they the same? Or are we simply talking about socio-textual practices and socio-cultural practices? Because ideology ultimately belongs to the person behind the ideology. The Daily Mail is sponsored by X group. So it's the ideology of a particular group. The Guardian is sponsored, or I don't know, by someone. So really it is ideology. I would like to change it to patronage. And within, is the patron that sets the ideology, particularly when it comes to media. I'm just talking about media. And even when you cross to smaller cultures, or maybe at a larger scale. So narrativity, the issue of narrativity is no more than ideology. And ideology is no more than narrativity. When memory.org, for example, the Arabic text said, وَعَلَى حِزْبِ اللَّهِ أَنْ يَلْتَزِمْ بِقَرَارَاتْ كَذَا وَكَذَا, and then the English one comes out as Mr. Nasrallah must do. So whose ideology, who decides that? That's the issue, I like the Birmingham School of Discourse Analysis particularly, but it becomes, we lose really sight of what's going on. It's the financier of the Daily Mail, because the people work for that person, he or she pays their wages. If they don't do what he or she wants, then they're out of a job. So ideology belongs to the money owner, or whatever, the purse, the one who's got the checks. And narrativity is nothing more than a reflection of that ideology. So we're talking about a text within a particular ideological. Ideology is a very thing. But excellent, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Dr. Said. Students, and in the back, anybody on the side? Yep, we have one there.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I just want to ask you a question.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'm not wearing my glasses. Sorry.
It's okay. Especially in political translation, should suggestion or assuming when we translate a political text should be not allowed? We should not assume or suggest any kind of words choice, because when we suggest or assume things, or words especially, we might allude something else, or different actions, or also we might reveal the real intention of the speech, right?
Yeah, I agree, because as translators, sometimes you wonder who are you translating for, which goes back to Dr. Saeed, because sometimes I translate a text and then I give it to the Red Cross, for example, when I work there, and they will say, no, you can't say Zionist. Where do you live at? This is the UK, you say Israelis. So here we go. It's even if I choose to be not neutral, Then there is someone behind me, which is the editors, mainly in newspaper or agents. They will always check on your work. And maybe it's the other way around. When I say Israelis and it's Al Jazeera, for example, they'll say, what do you mean Al Jazeera Israelis? You have to say, Kan Sahuni.
So it's all about the business, not just...
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. I mean, sometimes it's all about what the media outlets believe in, or what they want you to believe in. Sometimes they follow a certain pattern they cannot go from, because if you choose to say something different, it will attack their audience, or it will attack the party they're following. Okay.
If I can add just one thing in connection to what Dr. Asma has said. Well, I think this has also to do with power and hegemony, because Dr. Asma also is adopting Claire Clough's approach, which is the critical discourse analysis, which is different from discourse analysis. And the critical one, we have to deal with maybe 2 or 3 main components: language, power, and society. And when we talk about ideology, I think every agency, every organization, everybody tries to impose his or her own ideology through fire, through business, through money, etc.
True. So we have time for 2 more questions. I see one in the back, please, if you can.
May I support my student here?
Okay, sure.
Let me push the question further and say, is that a translation or rewriting of a text or rewriting of a message? So with the context of critical analysis, is it a rewriting? You would like to consider still a translation with a reform of a text coming? Your example, Zionist or Israelis.
Yeah.
Is it a translation or is it a rewriting of the message?
Yeah.
Via a different language, whether rewritten in the same language or in the second language, this is not a translation.
Yeah. Thank you for your question. The problem is now we have a lot of research and translation studies about loyalty, like the translator's loyalty, whether they should be loyal to the text, whether they agree with it or disagree with it, or they should just domesticate it, which is, takes us back to venuti, domestication and foreignization, whether I need to make it more, likable in the culture I'm translating to. I think nowadays, translation is taking a lot of different strategies. So a lot of people are just rewriting text. A lot of people choose to, no, I will stick to the same text. I don't agree with it, but I will still say the same thing, because this is not my words. I'm just going to have my name on it as the translator, not as the writer. So it really depends on the translator and where they stand on that. I personally choose to be neutral as much as I can, because it's not my text. So who am I to change the words of another person and put them on my own? It's wrong. That's what I believe in.
Okay, one more question.
Destructive, but this is a case in point for translation, for literal translation as a productive strategy. Thank you.
Yeah, well, because we're running out of time, I have to close this session. And yes, please.
Yes, one less than a minute. أول شيء I will talk in Arabic. شكرا لدكاترتنا وقسمنا وكليتنا على هذا المؤتمر الناجح جدا، وبالأخص دكاترة قسم اللغة الإنجليزية ما قصروا. You made us very proud. ويعني شكرا جزيلا، وأخص بالشكر دكتور محمد بن ناصر. لولا لما تحقق أي شيء من هذا. I could not keep this to myself. I believe myself, so I have to say it. شكرا جزيلا.
I was gonna thank you for being our students, and we are so proud of you. Thank you all. Closing session now. Yes. Thank you very much for coming. See you on Wednesday.
For the big thank you. We're going to award certificates to all those who made this conference a success story. I would like to start off with Dr. الدين, the president of Kuwaiti Translators and Interpreters Society.
He owns it. يا دكتور خالد.
بدك مساعد بشيء؟
والله إذا تسجل من زاويتك أحسن دكتور.
أسجل
بس ما بغلبك، لا خله مفتوح هذا الكفر.
إيش أسجل الرقم؟
بدك تنزل الرقم أنا أسجله.
أو بسجله؟
أنا بسجل حاليا. ممكن بعدها أنا أسجل بعدها. I recorded everything.
You are recording.
Yeah, I am recording. Listen that. تستاهل انت.
بروفيسور ماري.
تستاهل. صورة دكتور هني لو سمحت، صورة دكتور هني لو سمحت. صورة يلا تفضل. اوكي خلاص شكرا.
دكتور يوسف البدر.
يستاهل. مجلة آفاق. هم الأولوية. تستاهل.
دكتور قصي الذيبان.
يستاهل. نعم. زاوية الدكتور قصي كويس.
دكتور أسماء الحين. Dr. Asma has just graduated from the University of Birmingham, so she's a fresh graduate, and this is her first foray into the world of the academia to participate in a conference. So thank you so much. You made it successful. ابن القسم البار عبد العزيز المعشرتي. مترجم مجلس الأمة الفوري. A man who had a sniper behind him. The director of the MA program in Translation Studies and our mentor, Professor Al-Ahmadi. The director of the MA program in Comparative Literary and Cultural Studies, Professor Mary Therese. From the department, Professor Mohammed Fakal, one of our favorite teachers. الخرابشة. دكتور بكري عزام. Our favorite chair session dictator, Dr. Azam طفلة. We all know that he's the best when it comes to timing the session. Unfortunately, he's not here with us.
Exactly.
دكتورة سندس العجيب. دكتورة ابتهال الخطيب. دكتور خالد الجنفاوي. دكتورة عائشة الشطي.
طبعا الدكتور محمد بن ناصر.
Promoter of the conference, the sponsor of the conference, and the modest Dr. Shamnal Ijnai. الجندي المجهول دكتور خالد البحري.
بس عرفنا اسمه. بس عرفنا اسمه. فهو he is no longer مجهول.
One of the architects of the conference and one of the heroes of the conference and the fixer of the mic problems, our dearest engineer, Sarah Fawzi. Likewise, another helper, another fixer, another hero, and a role model to the ME students, Anfal Fatimi. And of course, one of the best presenters, Noel Ajmi. I know I'm being biased. As a translator, you have to be biased. One of the hardest working organizers, Noel Al-Azawi.
Thank you for everything. Thank you.
Shahad Al-Asawsi. Haneem Karam. Mariam Al-Khamis. The media facilitator and superstar Fahad Al-Tayri. May I say, if it wasn't for him, no TV outlet would ever actually pay us attention. So he facilitated the whole thing. الياقوت. هيا العراقي. فاطمة الكندري. سارة شمس الدين.
Somebody has to take a picture.
I am.
عبد الله النوبي. Making this a successful conference. It wouldn't have been successful if it wasn't for your support from day one. Whether you are at Kuwait University or from universities abroad or from the National Assembly, thank you everybody from the bottom of our hearts. You made it a successful event, and hopefully, inshallah, we'll see you next year, inshallah. Many, many thanks.
Thank you, thank you. إن شاء الله بداية. إن شاء الله بداية. بداية كويسة.
هيك نقول. يلا السلام عليكم.
الله يسلمك.